All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to another live Q&A here on the Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hopefully you guys are all having a good weekend here and a good Sunday and enjoying the warm weather and all that. So anyway, like all the other live streams here, we're going to go for about 2 hours. I'm going to give priority answering to anyone who does a super chat or super thanks thing, as well as anyone who is a member of the channel here with the special badges. They'll get the priority answering there. But anyway, yeah, so just glad to see is already a few of you joining in. We'll wait for a few more here. I see Charlie Boy as the first one to comment. Thanks for joining in, Charlie Boy. And yeah, so I guess we can just talk about the stuff from the weekly update and all that. I see Truck and Car Guys here. Welcome. Okay, here we go. Everyone's coming in. Kyle says, "Morning, Matt." Thanks for joining in, Kyle. Good morning to you. If you're on the West Coast there, here we're on the East Coast. It's just noon here, and just finished up my lunch, so good to go for a live stream here. But anyway, so yeah, we can just hang out here until we get a few more people, I guess. So Eco Blue, DuckTales, thanks for joining, everyone. And I'd be curious if any of you guys were able to go to any kind of Cars and Coffee this weekend, or I know someone always comments about how they love doing their hand washing on the Sundays and enjoying that. So maybe some of you guys got to do that. I actually was talking to a neighbor the other day. So one of the things with my house is I don't have a water line in the garage, crazy enough. And so I'm trying to find a way to get back to hand washing my car. I know some of you have asked for car washing videos in the past as well, as far as like what products I use and all that kind of stuff. And I don't have any go-to products because I don't actually like hand wash my car currently, but it's something I want to get into because I really miss hand washing my car. But my one neighbor suggested just using a power washer, even though I have to run it from like a faraway spigot further in around the house and have like low water pressure. I'm thinking that maybe the power washer might negate that, or be a good workaround for that to possibly do some kind of a hand wash thing potentially, even though the water situation is not great. We'll see. But I'm trying to get back to hand washing because I do really miss that. But if any of you have any suggestions, most of you probably know more about washing cars these days and power washers. I know nothing about power washers, so I'd love any recommendations anyone has, if anyone has any good ones. And DuckTale says, "I only wish I could do hand washing of my car." Well, then you're in the same boat as me, so I'm glad I'm not the only one. Rafi says, "Morning, Matt. No wash this morning. Expected rain tomorrow." Yeah, well, that certainly means it doesn't make any sense to do that. So bummer. But Radio, she says, "Hey, Matt, hope you've been well. I picked up my Fiesta ST to join my RS on Friday." Well, congrats. That's a fun little extra addition there. I love the Fiesta STs. I came so close to buying one a long time ago, back actually whenever I was debating getting the EcoBoost Mustang. I contemplated getting a Fiesta ST instead. But yeah, they're really fun little cars. In some ways, I kind of regret not getting the Fiesta ST because I think that'd be a really fun thing to try before I went into the Mustangs. But yeah, I'm still happy I did the EcoBoost, and that was a very fun car and a cool new thing to try out back then. But congrats on the Fiesta ST. That's awesome. I see Corvette fan also says, "Hi, Matt. My dad just got his green 2023 Kia Niro EV this past Wednesday. It's his very first electric car." That's awesome. Hopefully, he's been briefed on all the things you need to know about electric vehicles. There's a lot to learn, and it's a little bit of a learning curve there for them. But hopefully, it works well for him, and hopefully it fits what he's looking for very well. Because I know there's been a lot of, I've even heard from other like salesmen at dealerships and stuff, how there's so many people that try and sell to people who have no idea like what an electric car is, and then they end up trying to return the car because they don't understand it, and it's like a whole thing. So it's unfortunate some salesmen are like not educating people properly on what is actually required when you get an electric car, and it's a little bit unfortunate. So but hopefully it goes well for him, and congrats to him on the new car. Always fun to get a new car, and I love that green color too for those. It's a great choice. So Truck and Car Guy says he usually washes his car at least once a week. Yeah, I used to do that back in the day. Now I don't have the time and the bullet. I usually try to keep it fairly clean if it's going to sit for a while, but there'll be some times where it goes weeks just sitting there with some dirt on it, which I know is not a great thing to admit as a car guy, but it's just that car unfortunately just gets the short end of the stick sometimes. And Single says, "Buy the ammo power washer." Okay, I'll have to look into that one. Thanks for the recommendation. I'll have to check that one out. Raphael says, 2 hours detailing the car, sushi lunch, and now time to pour some bourbon and join the chat. Sounds like a good afternoon. Thanks for joining, Raphael. And yeah, maybe one of these times I'll do some drinking during the live stream. Although I feel like that would make me go a little more off the cuff. Maybe it would be a little bit dangerous because then I'm just gonna start getting more opinionated than I should get sometimes probably. But yeah, sounds like a good day. Man, I haven't had sushi in a while. I could definitely go for some sushi. Now you got me craving sushi, Raphael. So let me see here, some other questions. So Michelle says, hey, Matt, I enjoyed your RS6 video the other week. I see a red one all the time in my area. They look so cool on the road. They do. And it was amazing to me how many people noticed that car, especially in black. I thought it would really fly under the radar. But there were so many people that really were like turning their heads and admiring it and really impressed by it. So it's kind of one of those vehicles I thought would be more of a sleeper than it is. It's actually not really much of a sleeper because it seems like it gets a ton of attention. But they are so awesome looking. I love those things. And Dragon says, finally able to catch the live stream. Thanks for joining in. Glad you're able to catch it as well. And Corvette fan says his dad did the research before he got the car. Well, that's great because it's amazing how many car buyers do not do any research still. And I get it, sometimes people don't have the time to do the research. They don't have the interest in it. Car reviews and all that kind of stuff is not for everyone. I totally understand, but at least I feel like you could at least do a little bit of Googling, for some of these people just to have some information so the salesmen aren't just completely able to, pull the wool over your eyes, and just completely mislead a bunch of people like they sometimes do. But it's amazing. It's like the second largest purchase most people will ever make in their lives is buying a car. And some people go into it completely blind. And just for my personality type, I can't fathom how people do that, but a lot of people do. Chief Pete says, hey, Matt, trying to make a decision. I have a 2014 Mini Cooper S, thinking of trading in and getting a 2017 Mustang GT or keeping it and adding a 2007 Mustang GT. One great experience or two okay ones. I guess, I need a little more context as far as exactly what you're looking for your situation to be like and what your demands are. Like if you, like it just comes out like if you're going to keep the Cooper as a daily driver and you value good fuel economy, for example, you want to have the Mini still for that and then have your gas guzzler for the weekends or something, then maybe that would make sense to do both of those. And I honestly, that obviously, yeah, a 2017 Mustang is going to be a lot higher performing, a lot more exciting to drive than a 2007 Mustang. But it also depends on what you're getting into the Mustang for. If you're getting into it because you want a manual transmission and a V8 rear-wheel drive muscle car, both Mustangs will accomplish that same basic goal for you. And so, it's one of those laws of diminishing returns in some ways where, yes, it's higher performing in the newer one, but is it double the fun? I don't know if I would say it is. I don't know if it's double the price for a 2007 versus 2017, but just off the cuff, that would be kind of the debate for me as far as, what's worth it for you. So it's really going to come down to, exactly what you're looking for. Also the kind of technology you want. Are you okay with 2007 technology in the Mustang, 2007 safety in the Mustang, all those types of things? If none of that stuff bothers you, you might be better off just going for the 2007 and saving yourself a bunch of money and then having the Mini, especially if you really love the Mini. I think for a lot of people, I think it really is worthwhile to stick with what you love. If you really are enjoying a car, stick with it, especially these days with interest rates being what they are. I think unless you have a burning need to buy a car right now, or you just don't care about paying the higher interest, otherwise I would recommend no one buy a car right now. Everyone, unless you hate your car or you get your car totaled or something. Otherwise, it's terrible for a car reviewer to say this because my earnings, my living is basically based off people shopping for cars. But I think shopping for cars right now is a terrible idea, to be totally honest, because it's just the interest rates, unless you're getting an incentivized interest rate, it's just not a good deal right now. And I don't know when that's going to improve, but if you don't have a huge need to get something, I would stick with what you have until interest rates calm down, unless you're a cash buyer. And that could be a difference too. If you can cash buy a 2007 Mustang and you got to finance a 2017, go for the cash buy. I'd say that would make it a whole lot easier as well. If you're, in that kind of a situation, I don't know what your situation is, but cash buyers are the only ones I think that I'd feel comfortable recommending buying a car right now, unless again, your back is against the wall for some reason. And hopefully that helps you a little bit and doesn't give you too many extra things to think about. But if you have any follow-up questions, I'll try and answer some of those as well. Ace of Spades says the Grand Highlander appears to be quite the hit. Maybe it is. According to the YouTube views, it is not. But I mean, they haven't marketed that car yet. There's really no advertising that's going to be starting up for that for a little while. They're not hitting dealerships till next month. So there's a little bit of a rollout there. I think that's going to be a little more of a slow burn as far as the YouTube videos go. But I mean, I was talking to some other journalists, and it seems like most everyone's Grand Highlander videos didn't do great for those individual reviewers' typical view counts. It seems like it's kind of underperformed for all of us, generally speaking. So I think the main appeal of that trip was the fact that we were all filming the Tacoma there as well, which did very well for all of us. And that was the main payoff. Obviously, you don't have to twist too many people's arms to go to Hawaii as well. So that certainly helped. So it's not something it's not like it was a waste of time to film the Grand Highlander, because it's certainly, I think, going to be a very popular vehicle for sure. But the video absolutely is not worth my time as of right now, just because of how little money it made for those, small amounts of views. But hopefully it will be evergreen and get a lot of views going forward. Hugo says, hey Matt, you know I can't miss your live feed. When are you reviewing the Ranger Raptor? I have no clue about that one. I mean, yeah, Ford, as you've seen and heard in past live streams, Ford doesn't invite me on media drives basically ever. So I have no clue. And also, unfortunately, the press fleet that manages Ford gets me stuff pretty slowly sometimes. They're sometimes quick, but with the Ford stuff, typically I'm getting it way late. So I wouldn't expect a Ranger Raptor review from me probably till next year, unfortunately. Maybe this winter if I'm lucky. And unless something else, surprises me, yeah, I think it's gonna be a long while before I'm in a Ranger Raptor. Unfortunately, I still can't even get my hands on a Raptor RF-150. I've been waiting for that for over a year. Bronco Raptor, still haven't seen any of those. So that's the kind of timeline we're dealing with here. I haven't even gotten into a Bronco Raptor yet, and there's no signs of when that's even going to arrive. So yeah, unfortunately for me, I'm way down the totem pole on Ford's list. And BT Aurora, thank you so much for the first super chat here. He says, hi Matt, thank you for your work. There is a TLX Type S all-wheel drive. What's the point of front-wheel drive Type S and R? So you're talking about as far as the Integra goes and the Civic Type R. I think that the difference between those two vehicles, and I kind of talked about this a little bit in my Integra pricing video, but it really comes down to, do you want the extra weight, the extra luxury? And it is also, I think, about $5,000 more, if I remember correctly, for Integra Type S versus TLX Type S. But if you are a binary thinker of, okay, I want X amount of horsepower for X amount of dollars, and I want to have all-wheel drive, and I want to have all these features, yeah, TLX Type S is definitely the better buy. But I think that Integra is going for a different buyer that doesn't care about all-out speed, that wants the engagement of the manual, which obviously is going to be slower just by nature because it's a manual. I think, and also, they're even saying how it's a street-tuned thing with the Integra versus the Civic Type R being track-focused. So it's not even trying to go chase lap times in the Integra Type S. It's really just about a fun thing with a manual that has, a good amount of power. And so I think they're different buyers. It is tempting if you're in an Acura showroom and you see an Integra Type S and you see a TLX Type S side by side there, and there's only a $5,000 difference. I could see how that could be kind of a tempting thing, but I think most people going into it are going into it either for one or the other, and I don't think there's very much consideration between the two of them, would be my guess. I could be completely wrong about that, but I think, Acura knows their buyers, and they know, I think, what they can get away with and what they can't get away with. And I think they priced the Integra, comfortably under the TLX. You don't feel like you're getting ripped off because it is cheaper than a TLX, but they kept it close enough that they were able to keep the margins they need to keep on the Integra, and still preserve the TLX as the higher one in the hierarchy there. So I think there's room for both of them. and we'll just have to wait and see how the sales go. I think it seems like from what I've heard, there's a lot of interest for the Integra Type S. So I know a lot of people were floored at the prices and stuff, but it doesn't seem like it's hurting at least those early adopters. It seems like there's still tons of people on waiting lists for them and all that. And it seems like from a few little things that I've heard so far, it seems like Acura dealers are being a little more decent about the Integras. I did have someone send me an email though. I didn't cover it, but someone sent me an email though saying that they actually got in one of the early reservations for an Integra Type S, and then their dealer was like, "Oh yeah, you got the reservation, but if you actually want to take delivery of the car and have this allocation, you're gonna have to pay I think 5 or 10 grand over." So some of them are trying to do this bait and switch thing as well, which is really crappy. So be wary if you are someone trying to get one of those, but yeah, I think there's room for both. And thank you so much for the super chat. And I'll be curious to hear if anyone else has any thoughts on that as well. But getting back to the other member questions here, Mike says, Matt, what mainstream brand do you think is missing the mark the most right now? And what mainstream brand do you think is doing the best? So, I think as far as I think one of the brands that irks me a lot is Subaru, just because of some of the decisions they make. But clearly, Subaru's on a hot streak with sales; they're doing fantastic. So I think the sales numbers are justifying what they're doing, even though it's not what Subaru diehard fans from the early days would like to see, like myself. But as far as other mainstream brands, I think Nissan and Infiniti are the two that really need to turn it around. And I know they're easy ones to pick on. Everyone loves to pick on them, but I think first off, Infiniti is really, they have a lot of low hanging fruit that they are not taking yet. And I don't know why it's taken them so long, but everything in the Nissan lineup should have an Infiniti version that's nicer. I mean, that's basically, Lexus does a little more than that. There are some unique things in the Lexus lineup and differentiation there than, just badge engineering. But, I think honestly, Infiniti could just badge engineer Nissan stuff. It's not like Infiniti is this super prestigious brand that has to preserve their reputation or the perception there. Like they're already kind of pretty low tier from a luxury standpoint. So I think, make an Infiniti version of the Ultima, make an Infiniti version, that's a Lexus ES, shares a lot of stuff with a Camry. It's been a very successful formula for Lexus for decades. Why is there no Infiniti version of an Ultima? Stuff like that just to me is really easy. And again, maybe they have their reasons. I don't want to again be an armchair product planner over here and act like I have all the answers, because on the outside here I'm clueless. But just seems like why not do that? I can't think of any good reasons not to, unless Nissan's objecting to it for some reason, or they don't have the production capacity. But we're talking about Ultimas here, not some kind of thing like the Z or something, which strangely enough, they did justify, doing the 370 and the Q60 and doing that kind of thing with that kind of. Why not do that for everything else in the mainstream stuff where it makes you the most money? So, obviously they have the QX60, which it seems to be a pretty nice product. I haven't reviewed that. But it just, and they do it with the QX80. So there are some where they do that, but the mainstream stuff where they can really boost their volumes is, doing the Ultima and they could have even done the Maxima when that was around, just stuff like that, and not be scared of front wheel drive luxury vehicles like that. I think that's really the biggest one. But then Nissan as well. I think Nissan's doing a lot of really good stuff recently, but I also think that, they kind of fumbled the Z launch. I think they could have made a more affordable version with a limited slip diff for 43, 44 grand and had a lot more of a, seller on their hands than trying to, maximize profit with these performance versions for 50 grand whenever you can get a Mustang GT, which is higher performing, or a Supra for the same money. So I think those are the two that stand out to me the most, Mike. But I'd be curious to hear, if you have any brands as well that you're questioning their rationale for. And Hugo also says, my girlfriend got a 3.1%, which is amazing these days, but I also think it depends on the dealerships and the relationships they have with banks. True, but there is also they keep raising the baseline rates just in general with the Fed. So I think that is, making it so there is only so much they can do unless the manufacturer is willing to buy down the rate, and then they're paying for that rate. You're still, behind the scenes still getting that high rate, but they just, bought it down to make it attractive, but it's, so there are some, and I know Ram, I think was doing 2.5%. There are some out there. And if you can get a good interest rate, by all means, go for it. But if you can't, then it's just better off to just, wait on the sidelines for a bit. Ace of Spades says, do you think being a finance manager at a dealership, helping customers with loans/leases would be a fun job? If you work for a good dealership, yes. But I think, that kind of a position puts you in a tough spot because unless you are okay just kind of skating by with like the minimum pay that a job like that does, like the way that those finance managers get rich is by selling all the extra stuff. Like that's where they sell you the extended warranties and all the protection packages and all that kind of stuff. And they also play games with people on the rates. Sometimes people qualify for better rates, but they will say, hey, well, there's also this other thing, or they'll sometimes say like a higher rate and you can get a better rate. And this is why some people, I recommend, getting your own financing sometimes too. Be like, here's what I can actually get. Can you beat this? And a lot of times they'll match that, but some dealers do play games with that too. And they will actually pocket that extra percent of interest or whatever, as far as what the cash equivalent is. And, if they can sell you on a 5% rate when you can get 4 or something, then they can make some money there too. There's all kinds of slimy stuff in that position. Again, not all of them are slimy. You can do it with integrity and be helpful and have it be fun, but they're not charities, and so it's just a conflict of interest of, the least amount of money that the customer spends means that, you get paid less too. So it's just it's a tough kind of position to find yourself in if you are someone who's genuinely trying to help people. So again, I don't know all the details of it. It's been a while since I worked at a dealership. So, maybe things have changed in the past 10 years, but it's, it can be a not great position to be in if you have a conscience sometimes. And Two Track Jack says, as a prospective buyer, my sister stopped watching Grand Highlander reviews when she heard about the facial recognition tech. It was a big turnoff for her. That's good feedback, and that's something I can pass along to Toyota as well eventually next time I talk with them. But the one thing, and I did highlight this in my video, is that you can turn that off. And maybe some people don't trust the fact you can turn it off. I mean, you could always put one of those little like webcam covers over it if you don't trust that it's actually off or something. I personally wouldn't let that stop me from, getting a great vehicle if that's something you really like otherwise. But yeah, I think it's good they allow you to turn it off. It's something you do have to opt into. And, but I think that's also something, most people's phones have facial recognition stuff these days. So it's, to me, that ship has sailed, as far as being worried about facial recognition stuff to an extent. I totally understand the privacy concerns, but I think, Toyota's doing it in a safe manner as far as having you opt in, being able to turn it off. And that's also something you only get on, I believe, the super top version. So even if, your sister's okay with a mid-grade or a lower trim, then it doesn't even have that anyway. So that could be another way to sidestep it if she really is into the Grand Highlander there. Rafi said, you're 100% right. When I looked at a regular Integra, they said they were adding a markup to the Reserve Type S. Dealers. Grr. Elijah says, going back to Ford, do you know when the new Expedition will hit markets? No clue. It's kind of weird with the Expedition because, they kind of gave it a little bit of a refresh, but I don't think it really got as many of the same underbody changes as the new F-150, which was still kind of a heavy refresh, as far as that new F-150 a few years back as well. But I have no clue about the Expedition. The one thing we did here in the past couple of weeks is that there's going to be an Expedition-sized EV coming from Ford, and that is maybe going to replace the Expedition altogether. I don't know. They may keep the gas one around too, just depending on, I guess, how the electric one goes over, or, what the price difference is and stuff. So I'd say there's no guarantee there's even going to be a new one in general. If there is one, I'd give it a few years still. And especially now, since, Ford clearly is focusing on the electric stuff, like the gas stuff's going to be on the back burner from a, what is it, like development kind of, timeline there. I don't think they're in a big hurry to do a new one, because I think also people that are, buying those probably don't need the most cutting edge, tech and performance and all that kind of stuff. It's one of those vehicles you can kind of let it sit around for 10 years and it'll probably be okay. And I mean, that's what they've done with Tahoe and stuff for a while. They don't have to come out with a new one every 3 or 4 years. So I think there's not really much of a hurry there. So I think it's going to be a while for that. Trident Car Guy says Mitsubishi is so far gone from what they used to be, and it seems like Hyundai, Kia are where they could have been. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. And yeah, Mitsubishi, it's really a shame. I mean, I think they tried And I think, like they still have some pretty compelling stuff. The Outlander plug-in hybrid seems to be a pretty compelling option and value. And, you get the 100,000-mile warranty with them now. So you got that backing, which is good. So I think they are trying. It's just that they don't really have very much and they let stuff get kind of stale. And they're another one. They're partnered up with Nissan. Like, maybe Nissan doesn't want anyone touching their stuff, but like if I were running Mitsubishi, I'd be like, okay, how many of these Nissans can we rebadge into Mitsubishis and actually fill this Mitsubishi dealership with some new products instead of a bunch of old stuff? Like I've overheard some other journalists and dealers and stuff talking about Outlander plug-in hybrids, and it's like Mitsubishi dealers, like that is all they're ordering, and that's all that's being sent to them too. Like it's like Mitsubishi doesn't even bother with the other products anymore because they know they're not competitive. And then they're just like shipping everyone Outlanders because that's the one thing everyone's actually kind of interested in. It's the one thing that's actually new. And so it's just basically like Mitsubishi lots are just turning into Outlander lots, and Outlander plug-in hybrids in particular. They're churning those things out like crazy, which is good news if you're someone who's like tired of waiting for a RAV4 Prime or something like that, and the markups on those. The Outlander PHEV, I haven't driven it, but it seems like it's, maybe not quite as good as the RAV4 Prime, but probably close enough that if you can get a better deal on it, you don't have to go through the hoops of getting a RAV4 Prime or a plug-in hybrid Tucson or something like that. The Outlander could be, a good choice there. But yeah, it's sad to see how far Mitsubishi's fallen, and yeah, it's one of those brands. I don't know how long they're going to stick around for. It seems like they're kind of amazingly sticking around, but it's one of those brands I expected to go by the wayside several years ago, and they haven't. So we'll see what ends up happening to them down the road here. Single says, what do you think about Mitsubishi returning the Eclipse but in electric form? Honestly, I think that would be cool if they did. I don't know what platform they would use or how they'd even make that a thing, unless again they can use the Nissan electric stuff, I guess. But I think that'd be cool. And especially if it's any kind of coupe or anything sporty. I mean, any kind of vehicle like that that's two doors or sporty is always a gift in my mind. So I'm always happy to see stuff like that. And Avery says, what do you guys think of the Amira price hike? Sorry if this got asked before. I haven't been following that, I don't think. So I can't comment on that. I'm not sure. Yeah, I didn't even hear about it going up in price. But I feel like those are really, expensive to begin with anyway. So, are people going to be that upset that are actually buying it? I don't know. Maybe they are, but I haven't heard anything about that, unfortunately. And Omar says, will the F-150 ever get a huge change like the 2003, 2004 model? I don't know. Whenever it's doing as well as it is, it's one of those things you want to keep it evolutionary and you don't want to rock the boat too much. So I don't think you're going to see any kind of crazy change. I think the Lightning was about as crazy as you're going to get as far as a change. I think we'll see if they actually call it an F-150, but they're really seeming to be super hyped about this next generation electric truck that's coming. They're saying, I think it's going to be like a Millennium Falcon with a porch on the back or something like that. They in their quote as far as what they're talking about for this new truck. I don't know. They're acting like they just basically reverse engineered a UFO or something with how they're talking about how amazing this thing is. So I don't know, what's on the board there for Ford as far as what's coming up with that, and if that could get the F-150 name, if it's going to just go for the Lightning name or they're going to do something totally different. I have no clue, but that's, I think, the biggest thing you can expect as far as changes go. Otherwise, the regular F-150 is going to be pretty much the same old, I think, for a while here. And Kyle, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships there. And I see people are snapping them up. So glad to see all of you able to get those memberships there. Thanks so much for the generosity, Kyle. I really appreciate it. It really, really helps. And always appreciate your support, Kyle. He's been a member for over a year now. I really appreciate it. He says, before I pay all my bills. Well, thank you for that. But please, no one do any kind of money thing if it is at all any kind of financial strain. There are more important things than, these live streams and stuff. But I really appreciate the support. And it means a lot. And let me see, getting back to the questions here. Truck and Car Guy says, I've driven past Mitsubishi dealers and it's nothing but Outlanders and Eclipse crosses, which is depressing. Yeah, it's the way it goes for them, I guess. Hugo says, I think the biggest mistake was getting rid of the Evo. I heard they might be bringing it back as a hybrid. Yeah, there's always those Evo rumors, but these days, there's not even a Lancer anymore. So it would have to be some type of unique thing. And then if it's a unique thing, then it's going to be super expensive, and then it's going to be rare, and they'll make it limited production if they can even justify something like that. And then everyone's going to get mad that it's $100,000, So it's like, I don't know. I wouldn't hold your breath for any kind of new Evo. And I mean, I think from an enthusiast standpoint, you're right about that's kind of when it went, downhill a little bit there. But I think they're trying to kind of pull a Subaru and ditch the sporty stuff and not focus on that as much and not go for the niche stuff and instead just go for the mainstream stuff. It just didn't, work out for Mitsubishi like it worked out for Subaru. Thank you so much, Truck and Car Guy, for another 5 memberships that he's gifted here. And so glad to see some of you were able to snap those up there. And thank you so much, Truck and Car Guy, for continuing with the gifting every week. I really appreciate that. It's so generous of you guys. And always great to build that community of members as well. All right. So let me see. And Jay says Mitsubishi is a big company in Japan, but failed in the motors sector. Yeah, I mean, they're huge in Japan. They're also, I mean, as far as like the motor sector goes, they're doing really well other places in the world where they're like one of the top manufacturers in a lot of places. I mean, I think the previous generation Outlander plug-in hybrid was like the best-selling hybrid vehicle in Europe, I think, for many years. I mean, they kill it in other parts of the world. It's just US is just not into it. It's kind of interesting, but they also have a lot more products again in other parts of the world and more competitive products than they have here. So it just, they just kind of phoned it in for the States, I think. Goth Rocker says, I'm not an SUV guy, but the Mitsubishi Outlander is really nice. A really good value. The Mitsubishi Outlander is a comfy vehicle you buy and you will have 10 years of no real problems. Definitely. And I mean, it's great, again, having that 10-year warranty on them. And I think I don't think I would ever buy a Nissan Rogue over an Outlander because they're the same kind of vehicle underneath. Basically, you get a little more room with the Outlander. They're pretty close in price, and you get the 10-year warranty versus the 5-year one of the Rogue as far as the powertrain warranty goes. So it's basically getting a Rogue with double the warranty and more space for not much more money. And I think the interior, like you mentioned, is actually a little bit nicer, I think, than the Rogue, honestly. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's a solid vehicle. I didn't have a relationship with Mitsubishi as far as getting one to review. I could have gone. I have a friend that owns a Mitsubishi dealership. I could have just gone to him and reviewed it, but it's always a gamble with the ordinary crossovers as far as whether or not they're going to perform well on the channel. And so that was one I just decided to let pass me by and just kind of not cover it just because, I didn't want to waste my time with it, but it might have paid off. It's just one of those things you never know if the gamble is worth it or not. And Jay says Lotus Emira was using Mercedes engine, was going to make it expensive, especially in the inflation era. Maybe I thought, okay, so Emira, that's the sports car one, right? Because I'm getting confused with the Electra, which is the actual electric sedan thing. So Emira prices are going up. So did they ditch the Mercedes engine? I don't know how I missed this, but I'm completely out of the loop because it was one of them is using the carryover V6, right? And then the other one's using the Mercedes one, if I remember correctly. I think Emira's, they're going to be so rare anyway. It's one of those things, people pay whatever if they really want it. Otherwise, everyone else that's actually cross-shopping stuff is probably going to go buy a Cayman or something like that. And Truck and Car Guy says, don't worry, guys, I have no intentions of selling my Lancer anytime soon. That's great that you have one, and kudos to you for hanging on to it. Rafi says, I think Mitsubishi manufactures some OEM turbos. Maybe they are focusing on stuff other than cars. I mean, like I said, other parts of the world, they're doing huge things. And yeah, they do turbos. They do all kinds of stuff. And I mean, they make air conditioning units, like all kinds of random stuff. They're in the like heavy commercial trucking business. They have they're a massive, massive company. So yeah, they're fine from a corporate overlord kind of standpoint. It's just Mitsubishi Motors USA, I think, is really the one that's in trouble there. And I guess maybe it's one of those things where if you have all these other large industries subsidizing that, it can be a loser and be okay with that because it's not what they're depending on to survive. That's just maybe like a fun side thing for them to sell cars in the US or something. I don't know. It's just kind of funny. And Omar says, is it fair to compare a Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross and a RAV4 size-wise? Kind of, but the RAV4, I think, really more competes with the Outlander. The Outlander is kind of a weird spot because it's also like a little bit bigger than the RAV4 and offers the third row, but it's not a real good third row. It's like in a real pinch, someone's got a gun to your head, you got to put more than 5 people in your vehicle. Like that's all that, third row seems to be good for. So I really don't consider it a true like 3-row crossover as far as usable 3 rows. So I think I would more so compare it, and pricing wise, it more closely compares the Outlander to the RAV4. Eclipse Cross, I think, is, smaller compact or large subcompact, as far as pricing and how it's positioned and stuff. They're not bad. It's just, it just seems like kind of a weird position, but they just seem too expensive. Like, I just went on the build site just for kicks a couple of months ago because I was just curious, like, what do these things still cost? Obviously, they probably heavily discount them, and they don't go for sticker price. But I mean, Eclipse Crosses can still get like over 30 grand. I'm like, there is no way you should be paying that much money for an Eclipse Cross. So it's just, I think the pricing's a little off. If they, actually brought the pricing down and made them competitive from a sticker price standpoint, instead of having you have to haggle with a dealer, like, I think they could draw on a lot more people. If they're like, hey, Eclipse Cross is 22 grand, you can probably get a lot more people, I think, with something like that. But, good old Mitsubishi. And Sean, thank you so much for gifting another membership. I really appreciate that. And glad that Mark was able to grab that there. And all right, moving on to some other questions here. Challenger Chris says the crossover has become as exciting as the minivan. Yeah, I know. And in some ways, I think a minivan is actually kind of more exciting sometimes. I think minivans get a bad rap. I think they're actually a little cooler than a lot of people give them credit for. And they're so versatile, so practical. It's just one of those things. It's just a cool factor, unfortunately, these days. But I think a minivan could be one of the rising stars that could someday be cool again. And maybe the Volkswagen ID Buzz will kind of help that catalyst as well, with having a cool van again, making people be like, hey, maybe sliding doors aren't so bad on a vehicle. This is really nice to have. And maybe that'll kind of give some new found excitement for some of those other minivans as well. We'll have to see. Avery says, I don't think they confirmed the price hike for the Emira in the US, but overseas, both the 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder are up like 14 grand. It looks clean, but out of my price range. Yeah. Well, 14 grand is definitely a steep hike, but again, Lotus is another company just trying to kind of hang on there. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate, but that does, if they were pretty closely priced to the Cayman and now it's a price premium over a Cayman, that would make it a lot less exciting, I think. PK, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, do you think more wagons will come to the US? I don't know. I think wagons are the one that are probably not going to see a resurgence in popularity. I don't know. I don't think we'll see any more wagons. I think, we're basically getting wagons. That's all these crossovers are, is lifted wagons for the most part. I mean, yes, they're a little boxier than some of the more streamlined wagons that we've seen in the past. But, I can't remember, someone tweeted something about like, Americans hate hatchbacks, but oh wait, let's put some cladding on it and lift it up half an inch. And now it's a crossover. And now all of a sudden everyone loves hatchbacks. It's like, I think it was Jason Camisa that was like, people actually do love hatchbacks in America. It's just that they don't want to admit that. And so they just go for a lifted hatchback instead. But they're all buying hatchbacks. At the end of the day, everyone in the world still sees the value of a hatchback, and they're just taking them in one form or another. But everyone's buying hatchbacks still. So I think the wagons kind of fall into that same category. But I think as far as the low slung stuff, I think people like having the boxy shape to fit a bunch of stuff in a wagon. And so I think I don't think wagons will come to the U.S. in any greater volume than they have currently, which is sad to say. I'd love to see more wagons, but it just seems like time and time again they just do not sell unless you're the Subaru Outback, because it has cladding and that's it. But it's that's the only like car-based wagon that has ever really done well in large numbers. The Volvos have done okay, but even those are starting to really dwindle off, and they're going to get rid of the wagons here down the road as well. So just a bummer. And let me see. So another question here. Hugo says, I think Mitsubishi needs to go bigger and bring old names back like the Montero here in America. Let's go bigger at home. Very true. I 100% agree. I think they should make huge stuff. And again, if they have to borrow from Nissan, grab the Armada, grab the Pathfinder and all these other vehicles. And yeah, again, it's low-hanging fruit that they're not doing for some reason. I don't know why. Goth Rocker says, I hope Mitsubishi surprises us one day, like back in the day, Subaru surprised us out of nowhere with the BRZ. Mitsubishi has the engineering and corporate wise, they have the money. Yeah, they were so good, and they still are with rallying and all that. I mean, they're very impressive from an engineering standpoint. It's just I don't know what the bottleneck is there with Mitsubishi. I'd love to know. And Rafi says, I saw a post where they said the kids these days need to be raised in minivans. It builds good character. I think you have to get one next, Matt. Yeah, no minivan for us. I mean, we just have, our one daughter. So I think minivan's kind of overkill for that as well, but if you have multiple kids, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think I might have seen the same post you saw. I think it was a reel that was going around on TikTok and all that of, yeah, people being like, why? Like all these kids are growing up without, they're missing out on this whole generation of, like being in a minivan and just all the antics that went along with minivans, growing up and stuff. It's something they won't be able to relate to. It's crazy. Train Car Guy says, honestly, if they would have called the Eclipse Cross something more like a Montero Sport, no one would be complaining. Yeah, totally. Doing the Eclipse thing was dumb. I don't know why they did that. And Two Track Jack says, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries is definitely still massive. They have a significant portion of the Japanese Defense Force heavy equipment contracts in addition to the other global operations. Yeah, so they are, yeah, they're fine. Like I said, it's just the car side in the US here. And Hugo says, also, in my opinion, Mitsubishi doesn't really have a lot of options that people can pick from. I think they need to bring more model options to buyers. Totally, yeah. And Copper says, do you know if Volkswagen still offers their third row in the Tiguan, or do they kill that with a refresh? I feel like I haven't seen the refresh models with the third row. That's a good question. I thought that they still offered it, maybe like the base model, because I think that was still one of the big appeals of the Tiguan, and I don't think they would have gotten rid of that, but I don't know. I don't have the answer for you on that. It's a good question. Rafi says vans will make a comeback. We'll see. I think that'd be awesome if they did. And Chrysler, I think they're working on an electric van too. I think if they make them cool, maybe they could really turn them around. We'll see. I really would love to see Chrysler pull a retro move and make like an Ioniq 5 basically, but a van, and just, make it look like the original first gen, caravans and stuff like that, and make it super boxy like those, super, cyberpunk kind of styling. I think that would just completely demolish and be, I think that'd be a really cool way to do it. But, we'll see what they end up doing. These days, I know you have to have something really sleek with electric stuff, but, again, Hyundai justified it with the Ioniq 5, and I think, they're selling tons of those things because it just looks so awesome. So I'd love to see someone do some kind of retro van like that. Would be really cool. And even Chevy should do that. Like Chevy should totally make either another version of like the, or even Ford, like the Aero vans they had, or like, the GMC Safaris and all those things. Like, why do we not have a bunch of these like brick shaped electric huge vans and stuff like that? That'd be super cool to do. Goth Rocker says, I test drove the new Outlander when my mother was looking for a new car in February. She really liked it, but due to her age being 70, she felt the Crosstrek was the perfect fit, and it's great. Yeah, I think between those two, obviously, the Crosstrek's a lot more manageable, so totally makes sense. But I should probably get into the new Outlander. I mean, I drove the Rogue, so I can imagine it's pretty similar, but it's something I probably should do at some point. Alexander says, come on, man, don't diss the minivan. Newer Toyotas look dope with a spoiler. Yeah, they did a good job on the Sienna. I think the new Sienna does look really cool for sure. And I love the Pacifica too. Like I reviewed the Pacifica back when it came out, and I was like so impressed. It's got the V6 that a lot of people still want. It had great tech, great comfort, nice styling. You have the all-wheel drive as an option. They have the plug-in hybrid one. They got some good stuff going with that too. But yeah, Sienna I think is a good buy. It's just a little underpowered, but aside from that, they're nice. And even the Kia Carnival looks like a Range Rover van, and I think they nailed the styling on that one. But surprisingly, I haven't seen as many of those out and about as I was expecting to see. I guess they kind of didn't do as well sales-wise, at least around here, as I was expecting. But I think they did a great job on the styling on those. And Jay says Lotus Emir has an option for the 2.0 AMG motor, and it'll be the last ICE vehicle before going electric. Okay. So yes, the AMG, but I also thought there was the V6 too. I could be wrong. Ace of Spades says, I heard a rumor that the CX-70 will be the same dimensions as the CX-90, but only a 5-seater. If true, it seems to be a mistake, as I assumed it would be RDX GV70 sized. Well, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting it to be like GV80 sized. I think that was kind of what I was expecting, is it was going to go for like the mid-size luxury crossovers, but not the mid-size 3-row stuff. So I had heard and just assumed that CX-70 would end up just being CX-60 that is around everywhere else in the world. So it is shorter and smaller than the CX-90, but not by much. It's the same vehicle, just shorten up the back end a little bit, and you have the CX-70. So we'll see if that's what ends up being, though, because there was, I think it was an interview with some kind of Mazda employee that was saying how it's going in a different direction and it kind of doesn't even fit into a category and stuff. So maybe they're doing a coupé thing, or maybe they're doing something more radical than we're expecting. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think it should be too far off, though, if it is coming. Well, it is coming for sure, but I think it's gonna. I mean, I thought it was gonna be coming maybe even by the end of this year. I could be wrong on that. We'll have to see. But yeah, I think as far as RDX and GV70 size, that is where M or a CX50 kind of plays. So I think that would be kind of that sizing, and I think honestly it might even be bigger than a GV70 for the CX50. I'm not sure, but I think that's kind of where that will end up landing, is GV80 kind of size. And Sean, thank you so much for being a member for 11 months there, and using your sticker there. And he says it's right there, Mitsu the Evolution. Yeah, that's true about making it an electric Evo. That'd be awesome. All-wheel drive EV sedan aimed at younger buyers looking for performance with more edge than Tesla. I think that's a really solid plan. I would be 100%, in support of something like that. And I guess they could do it. It's just they would have to probably find some way to justify the costs. Because again, just doing like one thing to sell a few thousand of those, even if they were able to make it a really big hit, I mean, you're never going to touch Tesla Model 3 sales numbers, especially you can't beat them on price these days either. So it just it'd be an uphill battle. It'd be really tough. It's a great idea, but I just would be worried that something like that would end up just becoming some kind of collectible thing and everyone just get mad about it, like the Integra Type S and stuff like that. And it just, would, kind of just dampen everyone. It just seems like no one's excited about a performance vehicle unless they can build 100,000 of them and there's discounts on all of them and people can buy them off the lot tomorrow, for 40 grand. If based like a Mustang or something like that, unless it's like a Mustang or some like common thing like that, it just seems like there's people just can't get excited about stuff because it's just so hard to get all these things. And Angel, thank you so much for being a member for 2 months and using your sticker there. He says, hey Matt, I did the first minor mods to my Fiesta ST. I installed a pedal spacer for smoother heel toe and air filter. Next will be summer tires. Great improvements there. And I commend you for working on the heel towing. That's something I actually never mastered, heel towing. I know how to do it. It's just that a lot of pedal boxes is just kind of awkward, and I've never gotten really good at heel toe. And thankfully, with a lot of the auto rev matching vehicles you have these days, I'm able to, have it do the rev matching and still be on the brakes, for that. But it's something I'd love to get better at for sure. And so kudos to you for working on that. And I'm glad you're enjoying your Fiesta ST. It's awesome. Let me see. So don't want to miss any other questions here. So Truck Car Guy says, I love my wagon personally, just gotta say for a motor swap. Yeah, that Magnum is a special wagon for sure. I wish they'd bring that back. Omar says, would a full-size Subi, like a Suburban, like with a minivan sliding doors, work? Same style as Suburban, just add the doors. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that would be cool. That's a cool idea. Yeah, I think that would be something that would be fun to try and see if people go for it. I think, I think you'd have to do some kind of innovation there for a sliding door, though, because a sliding door on its own is great. And yes, it does give you some better access than an SUV, but it's not a world of difference to, I think, warrant that kind of a change, especially considering the negative connotations that sliding doors have with, some buyers. So I feel like I'd love to see someone do like a really wide sliding door where like the whole, like 3/4 of the rear just kind of like slides away or something. I think that'd be kind of, very concepty, with something to actually make it so you can really easily get into the third row instead of just still having to squeeze in between the second row, something like that would be cool. Dragon, thank you so much for the very generous super chat there. He says, I can't see myself buying an electric car, mostly because of the battery tech. I don't like the fact that their range varies and the overall battery life goes down over the years. Totally valid concerns. The only thing I would say is that a lot of that comes down to how you use it, where you use it, and the battery life thing. I mean, it depends on the battery and the manufacturer. Because if you look at some of the ones that have been out the longest, like the Teslas, a lot of those Model S's, they're doing several 100,000 miles before they need a battery swap, and a lot of them, they still have a good usable battery for a good while after. And what I've seen is the battery life is actually pretty good. I mean, that's why these companies warrant them for, over 100,000 miles. Some of them, it's like 150,000 miles for some of these batteries. I mean, they really do warrant them for a long time. So yes, if you're someone who plans to keep a car for 200,000 miles, you're probably still better off right now going with a hybrid or plug-in hybrid if you want something electrified. But I think that the battery issue has been kind of overblown. And if you look at the data for how most of these batteries hold up from real owners and people that are like using Model S's as Ubers and taxis and stuff over the past 10 years, there's some people with insane miles on their Tesla, and a lot of them are still in the original battery. So yes, they degrade over time, and yes, but I think that's one of those things too, where yes, a gas vehicle doesn't have that issue, but at least right now, the people buying electric vehicles, most of them aren't concerned about getting 150,000 miles out of the battery pack. They are leasing them, they're keeping them for a few years and flipping them. So it's definitely going to be a problem for people that are buying 12-year-old electric vehicles down the road, and that's something that needs to be figured out. And I'm sure the depreciation on those will account for that in some ways as well. But I think a lot of the batteries are doing better than most people are realizing, and more so than what's been put out there, I think. And the range thing, that comes down to how much you use the range. And again, if you are someone who does cannonball runs across the country every other day, don't buy an electric car. Just don't even save yourself the stress. But like for us with the Mach-E, I can just speak from our experience. The Mach-E that we have is rated at I think it's 220 miles, 222 miles, something like that on a full charge. We only charge it to 90% because that's better for the battery health to, again, keep that longevity, even though we're not keeping it for 15 years. For the next owner, I'm looking out for them a little bit, trying to, not trash the battery. So we only charge it to 90%. So, whenever it was up to even a full 90% charge in the middle of the winter, yeah, our range dropped to about 120 or 130 miles. Is kind of the lowest and the worst that it got in the coldest of winter. And that's assuming that we're blasting the heat and all that kind of stuff. It could be even higher if we didn't. But even at 120, 130 miles, for some people, that might be like, oh my gosh, I drive 200 miles a day. I can't do that. But for us, we drive like 10 miles a day. So I don't care if it even dropped down to 50 miles of range. I'd be okay with it because we never drive 50 miles a day. So it comes down to your personal usage case and, what you are willing to accept and what your life is like, or what you're mentally willing to accept. If you're someone who wants to have a huge buffer because you might have to drive across the country at the drop of a hat, then yeah, an electric car is not going to be good for you. But I think for the realistic usage cases of the average commute, for people that can plug in every night at home, I think electric vehicles, even with the current battery tech, which is going to get much better really fast. It already is getting better really fast. There's been multiple announcements just in the past few months about batteries, getting way more energy dense, having way more range, faster recharge times. All these things are coming really quickly. And but even with current technology, I think it's not a deal killer for most people, if they're realistic about what their actual needs are. But Tom, thank you so much for a super chat as well, a very generous one at that. He says, hey, Matt, my friend has a last-gen Accord, and each time I ride it, I'm pleasantly surprised. The seats are the most comfortable seat I've ever sat on. Interior seems well put together. Does the new Civic Si give a similar feel? In some ways, yes. I would say the last-gen Accord is certainly more comfortable. So if you are looking at comfort, I'd say it's more comfortable. I'd say the seats in the last gen Accord are also more comfortable. And interior build quality, I think, is actually going to be slightly better in the new Civic. They really did a good job on that new gen Civic interior as far as the buttons and everything just feeling really solid. So I'd say Civic has a similar feel, just a little stiffer ride. Seats are a little bit stiffer, but it's really comfortable still. Yeah. Hopefully you'll be able to get your hands on an SI to test drive or something, because I think that'd really help you, Tom. I know you've been kind of debating it, and I would say though, if you really like the last gen Accord, if you don't need the limited slip diff, you can find one of those with the 1.5 or the 2.0. They have some rev hang, so you probably want to do a tune to get rid of the rev hang. But aside from that, last gen Accord with a manual, if you can find one of those and you love the comfort of the Accord, maybe go for one of those, or at least try one out if you can find one. They're not hard. They're not easy to find, but if you can find one, that might be a good choice for you. You get a lot more space, a lot more comfort there, and you still have some really good performance. And I think the last gen Accord, in my opinion, is one of my favorite handling vehicles in that segment. They just drove so well. I love them to death. I did a road trip from New York City to Pittsburgh, in the 1.5T manual sport several years ago, and that was one of the most comfortable road trips. I love driving that thing across PA there, and loved the week that I had with the Accord with the automatic 2.0T touring version. That was great too. Those last gen Accords are fantastic. The new one's great too if you're okay with the hybrid thing or the base motor, but I love that last gen Accord for sure, and they're still totally sufficient from a tech standpoint. So, yeah, last gen Accord is still really solid buy even in 2023. And Sean, thank you so much for the super chat as well. He says, I tell you when looking to buy an EV to rent one first. More details coming in the regular chat. Yeah, that's also really good advice. Yeah, to rent one, do the research and really do the research. Not just watch a few clickbait YouTube videos, but really do the research. Go on forums, talk with owners, talk with people that have personal experience. Look at the public charging network for places where you might stop. If you do a road trip to the beach every year, plan it out, go on a better route planner and see what kind of a trip it would be for you, how many times you'd have to stop, how long you'd have to stop for. Are those chargers pretty reliable? Go on PlugShare and you use that. It's a lot of legwork that a lot of people just don't know to do or don't want to do. But you can really cover your base as well and kind of protect yourself so you don't have some of the unpleasant surprises that some EV buyers, especially the YouTubers out there, seem to have. You don't have to have those surprises. You can be prepared and and navigate around that stuff. And maybe I just got lucky, but I had really good luck last year with our road trip to the beach in the Mach-E. The chargers all were fine. Everything was good, went smoothly. And, it wasn't any more inconvenient for us, especially having, a little toddler and having to stop, every couple of hours anyway. It didn't, the car was always ready to go before we were. So it was never an issue for us. But again, that will totally depend on your situation. If you're someone who, sprints into the gas station and pees for 30 seconds and comes back out and then peels out of the parking lot and goes back to doing 100 miles an hour on the highway to go to your destination as fast as possible, then EV is definitely not the solution for you. Jay says, wait, I got to go back. There's a bunch of others members. I didn't want to miss their questions here first. So let me see. Got to find my place here. Single says, will the Nissan 400Z be on sale for 15 years? Totally possible. The way Nissan's going, maybe not 15, but I could certainly see 10. Jay says, why do you think the US doesn't have small car manufacturers like Lotus, McLaren, etc.? That's a good question. I think they do. It's just that they've never been super popular or successful. Like you have the super high-end stuff, like there's SSC, which says that Aero, the SSC Tuatara, I think, currently, I think has the top speed record. They're an American company. So there are some, and there's a lot of these little startups, especially with the electric stuff now, where everyone's buying skateboard platforms and making their own coach-built supercars and stuff. So I think there's some of that too in the States, but I think a lot of them just got weeded out because you got to think of, any company that would be doing that would be something that had to be a small company, because otherwise up until the 80s or the 90s, it was the big three. That was it. Like it was, and if you wanted a small sports car from them, you bought a Corvette, you bought, a Corvair, the Chevy, Ford, and Dodge had you covered as far as every segment that actual Americans bought for the most part, aside from the few people that bought Triumphs and imported those over and, MGs and stuff. But aside from that, those very tiny little niches there, it was, those big three just reigned supreme in every way. And so didn't leave a whole lot of room for small car manufacturers to survive. And so, getting into the past couple of decades, I think there's, more of that sprung up now that there's more competition. But then again, you also have all these new competitors that are also covering all those spaces really well too, with Toyota offering little MR2s, that competes with Elise and stuff like that a little bit, so you have some of those where trying to have a new competitor come out is just going to be tough whenever you have all those kinds of things over the past few decades. And now obviously there's less of that, but maybe there's an opportunity there for someone. But I think it's just, again, very tough to kind of rise above when you have so much competition these days. That's a great question, though. Two-Track Jack says, definitely agree on the retro van EV, Matt. Yeah, well, maybe someone will try something like that. It'll be awesome. Steven says, sup, Matt? I finally just saw the R6 Avant up close at Cars and Coffee yesterday, and wow, what a car. It has such a presence. Yeah, it really does. With that wide body, the way they made it extra wide there, they're awesome. I'm glad to see everyone else is loving the RS6 as much as I am, because I'm so glad that car's been received so well and that it's stuck around as long as it has. I think that's really impressive too. And I'd love to see love to see them keep it going. We'll see what they end up doing with that. But Truck and Car Guy says maybe the ID Buzz will convince Ford and GM to bring back the full-size brick vans. I hope so. That would be, I'd love to see a whole renaissance of new retro vans that follows in the Buzz's footsteps. That would be awesome. And yeah, Hugo says he's surprised they didn't bring those old vans back. Everybody wants a soccer mom vehicle. Yep. It just seems like everyone just wants the crossovers instead. Mike says CX60 is 187 inches long, which is basically RDX length. Interesting. Okay, so then I guess I thought that CX60 was bigger than that, but I guess it's not. Interesting. I mean, I have a CX90 right now actually in the driveway, and I mean it's pretty big. So they must have hacked off a lot of the CX90 to get the CX60 that small. I didn't realize it was that small, but thanks for the info, Mike. I appreciate that. I'm curious to see what they do with that. Steven says another thing that really caught my eye at Cars and Coffee was a 1969 Camaro with the original sticker. It was $3,059. Crazy how the dollar value changes so much over time. Yeah, it's the power of inflation. It's crazy. It really messes with everyone, especially the past few years here, where I've been telling everyone, 30 is the new 20 from a price standpoint, where it's unfortunately it's just, at least back then, wages kind of kept up a little bit better with the inflation than they do now, where it's just like everything else is getting more expensive, but no one else is getting paid really much more than they used to be. So it's like, it's kind of this thing where it's like, I keep having to remind people like, well, it's because of inflation. That's why this price increase is happening. But that doesn't help the buyer who's not making that inflated salary they need to keep up with that inflated car price. So just one of the problems in the world right now. Jay says, I wish the other OEMs would do more retro EVs like the new ID Buzz. Me too. I was so excited for the ID Buzz when that came out. And I actually, again, not like I could justify a van or anything, but if I wanted a really practical vehicle, I'd probably try and get an ID Buzz if I, needed something. It's just so cool. And it's the retro thing in me that anything retro like that pulls at my heartstrings. So yeah. And I have a buddy who's considering maybe getting one, so maybe I could live vicariously through him. But yeah, they're really, really, really cool, and I hope more companies do that for sure. But it seems like not too many people, at least on my channel, were excited about the ID Buzz, because that weekly update that I posted on Friday is, I think, the worst performing weekly update I've ever posted, at least in several years. So clearly that headline is not cutting it for a lot of people. They just are not into the Buzz, unfortunately. So hopefully the vehicle itself does well, and it's just my video that's doing crappy. But yeah, hope the ID Buzz does well for them, and hope they don't price it too high, because I mean, they're putting massage seats in it as standard. Like, that's cool, but come on, like, make a base version with cloth manual seats, do the roll-up windows like I keep saying all the time in the weekly updates. Like, I wish they'd do one of those for one of those vans. I think it'd be great. And you can extend your range if you don't have to have some electric motors putting your windows up and down. You can save 0.0001% of your battery there. And let me see some other member questions. Jay says, wouldn't be worried about the battery. The Prius runs more than 100,000 miles before needing new ones, and the technology is only getting better. Very true. Very, very true. But unfortunately, that's not popular to report on, so it's easier to get the clicks by being like, oh, EVs are terrible. So that's what ends up happening instead. Sean says, if you rent a budget EV, it'll have lower range, which shows you what it'll be like if you have your range cut by weather. That's a good idea. You'll use public chargers, showing you how it would be if you lost power. True. Yeah, so I mean, that's a good idea. Yeah, rent like a little Nissan Leaf or something, and if you can live with that, then you can definitely live with something that has more range or something. That's a good idea, Sean. And he says, at home for an extended time, if you can make a rental EV work for a week, you might be ready to buy or lease one. That's a really good idea. That's an idea that should be promoted a little bit more. Just like, yeah, I think that's a worthy thing. So anyone that is considering one of those, great advice, Sean. Yeah, try renting one and see how it fits into your life. So I see Dragon had another comment here. Sorry, I missed your super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat. He says, you ruined me with the RS6 Avant. I want one but can't afford one. Why you do this? Very sorry. Trust me, I want one too. It's on my dream car wish list, and probably be one of those ones that'll be out of reach forever for me as well. So I can commiserate with you there. We can all just drool with the RS6 Avants from afar. But it was very, very fun to drive for a week. It's a really nice vehicle. It's just amazing how much of an impression it made on everyone. It's one of those cars. I really hope they keep it up. I know obviously they're going with an electric one for the next generation. Hopefully that's still just as sweet in a lot of ways, and they kind of find some way to make it as impressive as the current one is. Challenger Chris says, I wonder if all the wagons, or if you call the wagons by using a state in the US, would it give it a new viewpoint? I don't know. I don't know why they never called them estates here like they did in the UK and stuff. Maybe just because it's kind of confusing because estate doesn't really have any kind of connection to cars here in the States, so I don't, maybe that's part of why. I never got that in the UK. Maybe there's a cultural thing I'm missing there as far as why they ever called them estates to begin with. A little history that I'm ignorant on there, I guess. But yeah, maybe that would help. I just feel like it's all about the look for a lot of people. Single says, will Hyundai ever bring back the minivan? They sell them other places in the world. They have the really sweet Staria minivan they just revealed last year that Korea gets. And I was hoping they'd bring it here because we have the Kia Carnival here, but you'd think Hyundai would want to get in on that action as well. They had the minivan, obviously, and so I don't know why they ever got rid of it permanently. They should definitely bring it back, but I don't know if they ever will. I think they also see the uphill battle that probably Kia's facing with the Carnival, and just maybe it's not a segment they want to bother with. And Omar says, does the average consumer still consider Dodge an American company, or they don't know they're part of Stellantis? I think the average consumer, yes, doesn't know that they are, so this is kind of funny, but my Dodge Hornet posts, it did okay on YouTube here, but I also post all of my stuff on Facebook and upload my videos to Facebook as well, because I've found that it's a different audience than on YouTube here, and more of a casual non-car enthusiast kind of audience that kind of finds themselves on those posts. And I read the comments in there, and it's really interesting to see the amount of people that were correcting other people that were like, oh, this is an Italian-made vehicle, it's not really a Dodge and stuff. But there was a lot of people that had no clue about the whole Stellantis connection even still, because that's not something that's really promoted. Again, we're all car people. We all are in the know about all this stuff. But, if you ever overhear a conversation from someone who, doesn't know cars talking about stuff, I mean, yeah, I'd say most average American consumers have no clue, have never heard the word Stellantis in their life, have no idea what that is. They probably would guess that that's something from Star Trek or something. If you told them what is Stellantis, they'd probably think it's a sci-fi movie or something. Like, they would have no clue. So I think Dodge is kind of protected by that a little bit, but I think, there are some stuff that is genuinely, like, just because they're part of Stellantis, like, clearly that hasn't stopped them from making 100% American vehicles, like Pacifica, or I guess I should say, North American vehicles, since a lot of them are built in Canada. But, a lot of the stuff is still through and through American. We'll see how that continues going into the future here. But, a lot of that stuff still is very much, North American produced, engineered for North American consumers and all that, Raphael says, I think the Buzz is very cool. I'm not at all in the market for a van, but I still like it. Anything that's different than a cookie cutter SUV. Amen. Totally agree with you there. And just the colors too. It's just like, finally, like, fun colors. We'll see if everyone buys them in gray and black, but I really hope that everyone, at least hopefully that buyer, is a little more open to colors, hopefully. And hopefully you'll see people actually buy the good colors in good numbers for once. That'd be nice to see. Goth Rocker says, I'm a sedan / car guy, but I look forward to your CX-90 review. That is an impressive Mazda that did with that vehicle with an inline six turbo. Looks great for an SUV, and the interior looks well done. It is really great. And if I'm assuming you probably already watched my regular review on the CX-90, I'll just be having it for a week here and doing my week with thing, kind of giving all my extra thoughts on the CX-90 that I didn't cover on the original review video there. But it's definitely been an interesting week. I don't want to give away too much for my week with video, but really the big question mark in my mind for the CX-90 was the transmission, because that was something that kind of turned up as a bit of a potential issue for that vehicle on the first drive, in San Francisco. And I really wanted to spend more time with it. And I even put it through my somewhat grueling traffic going through downtown Pittsburgh and stuff. So it used to be my old commute back when I used to work at Harrison Auto Sales, for anyone who is a longtime follower. So just driving through the city at rush hour is not fun. It's a lot of inching up, a lot of really tough stuff on a transmission. I put it through that to see, how it reacts. You have to wait for the video for all my thoughts on how that played out. But that was really the one thing that I was kind of curious about, because the CX-90 is great in most ways. That transmission just a potential Achilles heel, and I will explain more and give all my examples and all my impressions in that follow-up video. But that's really the one question mark, I think, in a lot of people's minds, and I really wanted to focus on that a lot in this video. So yeah, stay tuned for that for sure. Two track Jaxes. I'm excited for the ID Buzz. Also impressed with the interior space given the shorter wheelbase versus the Pacifica and the added roof height. Should make conversions easier for wheelchair user adapting. Definitely, yeah, it'll be great for that for sure. I think so. The wheelbase is actually, I think, 6 inches longer than a Pacifica, but it's like a foot shorter than a Pacifica. So it's shorter, but does have a longer wheelbase. So I think that's how it has the extra space over a Pacifica. But yeah, I mean, that third row, I think the Autoblog reporter, he was like 6'3", and he said that like even with the second row slid as far back as it can go, he still had like several inches of legroom, which is kind of unheard of. Even in minivans, you usually don't get that much space. So it might be one of the champs as far as like all-time 3-row vehicle space in the back there. It sounds like it's gonna be really impressive. And I think they did a really good job from what I can tell so far on that. And I'm excited to test it out someday. And Spy says, Spy Harpy says, I was wanting a new commuter car. A friend let me borrow his Model 3 for a day, did all my errands in it and loved it. Another friend let me drive his performance model, and I caved and bought one. They are really, especially these days, it is like, it's really tough to not buy a Tesla if you're shopping for, an affordable-ish EV right now. Like, they are a really tough thing to argue against. And actually, I have a friend of mine who's also kind of in the same dilemma where he actually has a pre-order in for an Audi RS3. Awesome car. And I took him for a ride in the one I had last year, and that really sold him on that. And he went and actually placed a pre-order for one. But then he's now seeing how cheap a Model 3 Performance is, and he actually test drove one, and he's like, I kind of just think I might go for a Model 3 Performance, which I know for some people that's going to make them like fall out of their chair. But like, if you're really focused on just like straight line acceleration, especially, it's really tough to beat the Model 3 Performance right now. So I totally get it, Spy Harpy. I mean, and especially at the price, I mean, you can't get anything faster for less money right now. I mean, what is it? 3.1 seconds 0 to 60 or 3.5 seconds 0 to 60 for what, 42 grand now it is, or whatever. They keep slashing the prices. The price is always, it's all over the place all the time. But I mean, it's really cheap for the performance, straight line performance you get. And yeah, and that's what I've always told people. If you want to, have the bragging rights of smoking people at red lights, just go buy a Model 3 Performance and call it a day. Like, everything else is not going to launch as well. It's not going to be as fast off the line. You're just going to lose the Model 3 Performance in 99% of the scenarios out there if you're actually worried about, bragging rights at red lights and stuff like that. Challenger Chris says Dodge is looked at by its heritage. Definitely, yeah, that certainly plays into it as well. There's so many people that, they go back to that old stuff. Even though Dodge has been buying cars from other people for decades now, they did that in the 70s and the 80s too. It doesn't seem to have hurt their image really. And Single says he's got to head out, so thanks for joining us, Singles. Raphael says, it's funny, I really like all the fun colors, but my own cars, I like gray and black best because I'm a detailer and I can make those glow. Well, yeah, you must be a really good detailer to make black look good, because black cars are so hard to take care of, and it's a chore for sure. But I'm glad you enjoy it, and I'm glad that gives you a good payoff. But man, yeah, it's a lot of work. And gray cars look cool. I don't fault anyone for going for a gray car. It's not like everyone has to have every color of the rainbow for their cars. It's just that it's just these days it's a sea of gray and silver and black and white out on the roads and parking lots. And it's just a little depressing sometimes from how much more fun and colorful things used to be back in the day. Ace of Spades says, I think the CX-90 PHEV gets rid of the low RPM shifting question and is smoother. The wet clutch question on the inline six was a big one. Yeah, the problem is, though, with the plug-in hybrid, I'm pretty sure, I have to remember because it's been a few months now since I drove the plug-in hybrid, but I mean, I'm pretty sure that some of that electrification still does go through the transmission. Because I think when I was talking to the engineer, they said that it is still shifting, because I was feeling shifts in electric mode. And I think that's because it still goes through the transmission for that electric power. Because it's not like an e-axle like the Toyotas. It does not have a separate thing in the back. It is putting that electric power through the drive shaft to all four wheels still. So I think it is going through the transmission. So it still would potentially have the same problem. I was hoping that maybe that would sidestep it a little bit. And that would get rid of some of the delay, because you still have the start stop thing in the inline six, that whole 48 volt system that can kind of make it a little more sluggish to respond to. But the plug-in hybrid, I think still, if my memory serves me correctly, still goes through the transmission. So you still have that wet clutch thing there with that you have to worry about. Garth Walker said, "Yeah, I loved your video on the CX-90. I'm looking forward to your week with it video. Harrison Auto Sales is the Mitsubishi dealer. You should test drive the Outlander for money. It's well done." So Harrison Auto Sales isn't the Mitsubishi dealer. They're another one. They're two different guys that own dealerships that I know. But Harrison Auto Sales was the one they sold the used stuff, and that's where I filmed my review on the Chrysler 300 back in January, and the Infiniti Q50, the used one that I did, was there as well. And I'm hoping to get back there for more vehicles once I can find more time to review more used stuff, because the used stuff, I still really have a passion for doing that, and I think that is still a cool niche that no one's really covering very well. So I need to get into more of those. Just again, the time thing. It's tough. I'm trying to experiment with ways to open up my schedule a little bit more to do a little bit more of the used reviews. It's just trying to find the time. It's so tough. And Larry says, "I just want to say thanks to whatever legend gifted me a membership. That notification was a great thing to wake up to." That's awesome. Yeah. And thank you so much for having your gifting on there. And yeah, thanks to those of you who do get those memberships. It really is very much appreciated. And Two Track Jack says, "Thanks for that clarification." Yeah. JK says, "If the vehicles are manufactured in America, no one cares who owns them, just like the Japanese are not wholly owned by Japanese, but they're manufactured there." Yeah, and that's the whole thing, with a lot of the Japanese and other, brands being manufactured here in the States. And, it's funny, like, the Dodge is manufactured in Italy for the Hornet. And then you have other American made vehicles that are actually built in America that, get this conception of having this Japanese build, like the Toyota Corolla Cross, for example, built in Alabama. But most people look at that and say, "Oh, it must be built in Japan because it's a Toyota," even though the Camry's been built here for decades and stuff. There's still some of that, just thinking that people don't realize, that it's not always built in the same place where the company has originated. And CK says, "It's kind of crazy that a Model 3 Performance has acceleration competitive to a GTR, and it's a family sedan and a lot cheaper and way more efficient. What's holding me back is the styling." NPC Mobile. Yeah, it's the styling of the Model 3. I still don't love either. I hope that they freshen it up with this refresh that's coming sometime soon, it seems. But yeah, I think the Model 3 Performance, or the Model 3 styling in general, I've kind of gotten used to it over the years, but it is now, since there's so many of them out there, it certainly blends in and isn't very distinctive, which, again, depends on your personality as far as whether that's something that's good or bad. But I do wish that they, had freshened them up like every other car company does every few years, and instead it's they're not too worried about keeping fresh designs at Tesla, unfortunately. And Trenton Carga says, "I do need to do a paint correction on it when I have the time," as far as his wagon goes there. And Goth Rocker says, Dodge in the future is in trouble because they have to fully reinvent themselves. Their whole identity is gone. It will be very hard to get over the Hemi V8 sound and image. I think Dodge. When I think Dodge, I think Hemi. Definitely true. And we will see. It's still so hard to read Dodge because, I've been on conference calls with their actual CEO when he was like, "No, like, we're done with the V8s, like, we're doing electric." And they're like, "Well, is there a potential there could be a gas version of this new Charger that's coming?" He's like, "We're just doing the electric thing. That's all we're focused on." And he was like annoyed people were even asking about the gas thing. So like, there's that, but then there's also other interviews and stuff and other reports claiming that there's still going to be some kind of Charger Challenger with the Hurricane 6. And, I don't know what to believe anymore as far as what's coming, for Dodge in the future. I think it is safe to assume that the supercharged V8s are probably gone for good, but the Hemis will still be justified in the trucks. And so therefore they can still subsidize, a money losing Hemi in a gas power thing. And there's, I think, Car and Driver or Motor Trend or someone was saying there could potentially be like a regular 4xe kind of electric thing on top of a regular naturally aspirated Hemi in a future Charger or Challenger. And that could be the new Hellcat that could get to 700 horsepower with a, 500 horsepower gas engine and then 200 horsepower electric motor or something. So there still might be some hope for that as far as a V8 sounding thing that still is fast but a little greener. They may just go for the fully electric thing. I think, their whole tagline, and at least as far as if we can trust their marketing currently, it's this the whole performance made them do it thing. And like I said with the Tesla Model 3, if you want to have the fastest thing at the drag strip, you go electric. Like you can't beat it. Like so I think, from that standpoint, I think Dodge, they are giving buyers kind of what they want. If that buyer just wants to win at the drag strip, the electric one's going to be an enormous upgrade in every possible way. So for those people, it's a win. And if you are someone who actually wants to have fast acceleration, 1,000 horsepower electric charger is definitely going to be a way more exciting experience in a straight line from a lateral G standpoint compared to anything that's come before it, so it's an upgrade. And if they're truly chasing straight line performance, the electric is the no-brainer way to go for sure. But yes, you miss out on the soul and the passion of the gas engine and the character and all that. And we'll see. But I think, at least from what I heard whenever I was on that conference call, I think they said they did, a lot of workshops on this. They did a lot of, focus groups with people. And I think that they said once they let current Dodge owners experience the performance and experience and like see behind the curtain as far as what they are planning and what they are doing, I think they said something like 2/3 of current Dodge muscle car owners would consider the electric one after seeing what they were shown. So yes, they could still lose 1/3 of their buyers, and there's some people you're never going to please, and unless you keep making the 2023 Challenger for the next 50 years, there's still going to be some people that are going to be mad, and that's just the way it goes, and there's still people from the 70s that are still like, oh, I don't like those new Challengers. I'm sticking with my 1970 Challenger, and that's the best one ever. I've seen those comments in my 1970 Challenger review video that I did. People like, no, the new one sucks, and people are still stuck in 50 years ago. So there's always going to be those kinds of people, but I think it seems like Dodge is confident that at least 2/3 of their current fans will like the electric stuff once they get a chance to experience it, and that it won't be the crash and burn that a lot of people think that it might be for them. We'll see. Maybe it will crash and burn. Maybe the whole thing will be a horrible idea and Dodge will shrivel up to nothing. But I don't think they would fumble this that terribly. And if they do, then I think they have a good backup plan in case it does end up crashing and burning. But I have confidence. Dodge is really good with marketing. They're really good with building hype. They're really good. I mean, look what they've done the past 10 years. They know how to like get people excited and make awesome products. And I have confidence they can do that in the electric era. And I have confidence in their leadership and their funding now. They've got the pockets for it. They've got the vision, and they've got the heritage to lean on. And I don't know. I think they can pull it off, but that's just my opinion. I know there's lots of people that think otherwise, and we will see what happens. Only time will tell, And Raphael says, when I was a kid, American, Japanese, and German meant they were built there. It's past time to leave that behind and just look at do I like this car? Definitely. And that's the kind of thing I run into all the time with a lot of comments still on Hyundai and Kia videos. People just are still like, oh, these are garbage like they were in the 90s. And it's like, nope, things change. Like, they're not the same cars that were in the 90s, but for some people that's hard to accept. Challenger Chris says Dodge will adjust, but they're going to have to stick with the muscle car look, even though it's electric. Yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't know what you guys think, but I thought that everyone seemed to really love the electric Charger concept thing. I mean, that thing looked awesome in my opinion. I really loved it, and I mean, it's like a vehicle that, if I, again, weren't keeping the Bullet forever, like, it would be something I would strongly consider getting because it looks so awesome in my opinion. So again, we'll see what they do with the actual production version, because since they did the whole bait and switch thing with the Ram Revolution and the concept and the production version being so more watered down, we'll see what ends up happening from Dodge as far as whether they're just going to do the current Charger and Challenger for another 20 years with just an electric skateboard put underneath it instead, or what? I don't know. We'll have to see. I don't know what to expect at this point. Mike says, Matt, why haven't we gotten a Grand Cherokee SRT with the high output Hurricane? What's holding them back? I don't know. I remember there was an interview where someone asked about a new SRT. I don't think they can justify the V8 anymore. So, but yeah, your question about the high output Hurricane, I don't know. Maybe that's something that they will eventually do. I'm not sure if the SRT sales just weren't enough for them to justify it or what the deal is. I mean, that would make a lot of sense. That'd be a really good idea for them to do one of those. I don't know. I really don't know. That's a very good question, Mike. I I wish I had an answer for you there. Trenton Car Guy says it's kind of funny when Dodge is going EV and yet Toretto is in a 70 Charger with a blown Hemi in every Fast and Furious movie, even the new one. Yeah, well, I think that that's just universal. I'm sure that Dodge would love to have Vin Diesel racing around an electric Charger to kind of prime everyone, but I just think that for one, that is the one like car that has kind of stuck with the franchise and as a character in and of itself. And if you change that character into some completely new thing, that even if it looks kind of like a new version of that, it's still, I think that's something they don't want to touch, and mess with at Universal since they know that's his thing. I think that's just one of those things that they can't part with. I still have not seen the new Fast and Furious movie. I'm hoping, I don't know if I'm going to end up seeing, because now they've like reduced the amount of show times in theaters, and none of them are a convenient time for me. And I never got around to seeing it whenever they actually had a lot of show time. So I don't know. I might just have to wait for that one to come out on Blu-ray or something. But hoping to see it eventually. But yeah, I think it's just, maybe they'll do it for the next one. I don't know. Maybe if Dodge throws enough marketing money at them, Universal won't be able to say no. But yeah, maybe it'll be kind of the same kind of thing. Like, what other movie did they do that where like it was like at the end they had like the new version and it was kind of this cool transition. I think it was maybe for the Audis for the Avengers or something where it was like, ooh, like, we used to have the older ones or whatever, and now we've moved on to the electric thing. Like maybe that's something is, you'll see Dom's Charger finally get fully destroyed to the level where they will never be able to rebuild it. And then, they say, but hey, Dom, there's a new model here. And they pull that out. Maybe that'll be like the grand finale of the final movie or something like that. We'll have to see. But anyway, moving on. Jay here says, I saw on Car Gurus that there are many FK8s in PA with low to 70,000 miles in the 38 to 45,000 range. One way to get yourself a Civic Type R. Yeah, I mean if you're up to almost 70,000 miles, that's a lot of money for something. When I still feel like it's possible maybe somewhere in the country to get a Civic Type R at sticker price. Maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like there has to be one decent Honda dealer out there that isn't price gouging people that could sell you one for a sticker. Maybe you'd have to wait 3 years for it to show up, but I don't know. I'd rather do that than buy an older FK8. Just because I think the new one is a really nice improvement. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the FK8s. It's just the better infotainment. I like good sound systems. You get the Bose stereo in the new one. There's just some nice upgrades. But for anyone else, yeah, I think FK8s are still a ton of fun, and still, I'd say 90 to 95% of the same fun as the new one. So yeah, if you want to save a few bucks, especially if you're into the 30s, that makes a lot more sense than once you're into the 40s, I think. And Carlos says, hey, Matt, how's it going? Joining late because making some changes to the 86. Hope your week has been great. Well, thanks for joining, Carlos, and hope you're having fun with whatever changes you're making there for the 86. Hopefully you're still enjoying it, and hope your week has been great as well. And everything's going well here. Just having another fun live stream here. And we got another half an hour or so to go. Justin Hemme says, people need to accept the fact that we live in a global market. People have claimed my G87 M2 isn't a real M car since it's made in Mexico. They ignore that the Z4M was made in the USA. Yeah, it's just some of those biases and whatever else is playing into those opinions just are very persistent and very stubborn opinions that a lot of people have, and it's very tough. But yeah, it'd be great if people accepted we live in a global market and we're open to diversification. But it's just some people are the way they are. It's kind of funny, but that's interesting that people don't think that the new M2 is a real M because it's made in Mexico. It's engineered by the M engineers. It's built with M parts. Like, who cares who's screwing it together? Like, I don't know. Anyway, that's a really dumb opinion, but yeah, that's the world we live in. Goth Rocker says the new electric Charger sounds awful with that goofy Fretsonic exhaust. Sorry, we all know it's awful. Well, they are changing that because I think they said that was kind of like a beta thing they were working on improving, and there was 3 different sounds I think at SEMA last year, and they were kind of polling people about which one they liked the best. And I think I can't remember, someone said they heard a new version of it and it sounded better. And yeah, I mean, we'll see what they do with it. I think I have to give them credit though for that exhaust because it's an actual like set of pipes with valves. So it's an actual thing, like a musical instrument in a way, like exhausts have always been. And I just have to commend them for not doing the same thing. They could just phone it in and just do a silent electric thing and just make it all fake and play through the speakers like everyone else is doing. But like they're being daring and bold. Maybe it'll bite them in the butt, but I think I at least, from someone who reviews cars, seeing a company do something creative, do something out of the box, something that the accountants probably said no to, something that, maybe the more traditional thinkers in the company might have said no to, but they pushed it through, they fought for it, and they got it out there. Those are the types of things that I really respect. And those are the things that go a long way for me whenever I'm reviewing a car, whenever I notice those types of things. Like, for example, I was talking to, whenever I was on the Escalade V launch, I actually had the guy who came up with the original Escalade, and the guy who is considered the godfather of the Escalade, that's been with the Escalade ever since the very beginning. I was talking to him, and like he was saying, and the engineers were talking as well, about how they really had to fight to get the Escalade V to sound as loud as it did, because a lot of the people in Cadillac were like, "Oh, this is an Escalade, you can't have it that loud." And they're like, "No, this is an Escalade V. This is the last time we're probably ever going to do this kind of thing. Let's do crazy. Let's be crazy." And they went for it. And that Escalade V is the sickest sounding thing as a result. But that wouldn't have happened without passionate people trying something different and being like, let's challenge the status quo. Let's do something different. And in the Escalade V's case, it paid off. And obviously that's just, was a little simpler of a debate of like, should it be loud or quiet? But like, I think with the Chargers, the same thing. They could have just not had the whole exhaust thing, but I think that it makes it cooler, and it makes it it seems like a more passionate project with stuff like that involved. They're thinking out of the box. They're trying harder than they need to try. And I think hopefully that will, pay off for them. We'll see. But I'm not hating on that exhaust. I think it's cool, but to each their own. And Jay says, Mazda is the last Japanese automaker to make almost all of their vehicles in Japan, 90%. Yeah, and but they're another one. They're going to do more and more stuff here in the States. They have the CX-50 now, and they just announced, I think there's going to be another one they're going to be building here soon. So they're definitely doing more for sure. But that is one thing about Mazda, is they are very much still very much a Japanese brand. I think a lot of people really do appreciate that about them, though, and I think Mazda is just they're doing so well right now. And Shrug Car Guy said they did conveniently put the new Charger EV in the beginning of the new Fast movie, but that's all I'll say. Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, I'm curious to see that placement then. Thanks for the little teaser there, and thanks for not spoiling it. But I'll be curious to check that out. And Goth Walker says, yeah, it's like a pipe organ, but I have to be honest, that sound ruins the look of the new Charger. Interesting. We will see what the final sound is. If it sounds really bad, then I can totally see that, but I'm hoping they make it sound good. So Alex says, hey, Matt, do you think prices will drop much on used S550s when the 650 is released? I think there'll definitely be some natural acceleration of depreciation, just because you're going to have a lot of trade-ins, in the first year here. A lot of people are trading up to the 650s. So I think there will be some of that. I think you can expect at least the regular versions of the S550 to drop. I think what I'm seeing, at least so far, is that like Bullet prices, Mach 1 prices, those ones are all staying solid because they know there's probably never going to be another one of those. So those ones are more collectible, and it seems like those are holding their value better. Like I just looked up just for kicks the other day, the Bullets trade-in value, and I think the Bullet's still worth like 46. I paid 50 for it back in 2018, and that was sticker price back then, and they got down like right before the supply crisis, in 2021 there. They got like right in the height of COVID stuff in 2020. I think the lowest I was seeing was like 38 or so. And then they rebounded from there. And then for a while, it was like they were, basically going for like 50 grand again. Now they've kind of cooled off a little bit. So it's again sitting around 46 is the private party value, I think, for a Bullet like mine with the same kind of miles and stuff. So I think those are going to hold, but I think regular S550s could drop a little bit. But I think there's also some people that aren't going to switch over. I think that a lot of people still don't like the screens, and they also don't like the much higher prices. A lot of people just, they used to be able to buy a base GT with a manual for 30 grand or a little over that. Now, I mean, there's no way you can get anywhere close to that. So that buyer, if they still are making that kind of money, they are not going to be able to get the new one, or even new EcoBoost basically for 30 grand. So, there's, I think some of that. I think you're going to see some people holding on to their S550s a little longer than maybe the past generation. So I think there's some of that too. So I think, long answer, but I think that you will see prices drop a little bit just because there'll be a lot of inventory flooding the market for the next year here. But then after that, and it cools off and everyone's got their 650s, I think you'll see S550 prices probably stay pretty steady, relatively speaking. But that's just my hunch. Gothrocker says, just an FYI, Mitsubishis are all made in Japan except the tiny Mirage car. The new Mitsubishi Outlander, both gas and PHEV, are made in Japan. The Nissan Rogue is made in the USA in Tennessee. Interesting. Well, thanks for the info. Yeah, I didn't keep track of where the Mitsubishis were made. So that's good for anyone else that does value the Mitsubishi or the Japanese built thing for sure. Raphael says, Matt, as a Bullet owner, what do you think of the Mach 1? It's definitely polarizing. I love the Mach 1. I honestly, I'm jealous of the transmission in the Mach 1. I wish we had the Tremec and the Bullets. Yeah, I mean, as far as, I think the Mach 1s are great. I didn't think they were too polarizing, honestly. I think it was, a really nice little evolution, a new special edition. I thought the styling was really well done. And I think they will hold their value probably even a little bit better than the Bullets because, again, you had that Tremec, and especially now, you want to get a V8 Tremec manual, Mustang, you got to go to a dark horse. And, those, you see the prices of those things. What do they start at now? 56. And then they go up to 70 or something like that. So, I mean, a Mach 1, anything under 50 grand for a Mach 1 price is going to be a solid buy. And then, I mean, I think Mach 1s are even going for more than that because getting away with the markups. And again, people don't love the styling universally and stuff. So I think there's a lot of that that's going to hold Mach 1 values really high too for that reason. But yeah, I like the Mach 1s. I'm still hoping to review one here. I have one waiting for me in DC. I just have to make the trip down there to review it, but I really want to do that here this summer, hopefully at some point. He also says it was the whole parts bin thing. I like the Mach 1 and the Bullet, but I'm old enough that the movie is relevant, so Bullet for me. Yeah, well, for me, it's just that I'm an old soul, so I just, love the Bullet thing too. But yeah, Mach 1, I get the parts bin thing, but I think that it's, for when it's those parts in the parts bin, it's a cooler parts bin car than, something that is a little less exciting. Tom, thank you so much for another super chat here. He says, does the last gen Accord manual transmission feel as good as the SI? Is it sporty enough or similar feeling to an SI? I see some used ones, but for about 30 grand. The shifter is not as good as the new SI. The new SI, they did a really good job. First off, they got rid of the rev hang, so that really helps as far as the shifter in general. But as far as the actual feel of the shifter itself, it's a little notchier in the new SI. It's a little heavier. It's a little lighter in the Accords and in the SI of the last generation even. So it's a lighter feel. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that it's less involving. It's a little less muscle that you have to put into it, and it's just but it's a really smooth manual. I mean, Honda still does some of the best manuals out there, so it's still a fantastic manual. Again, if you can get rid of the rev hang with a tune, I think it's great. And yeah, I think they're really nice. I think, again, SI is still slightly better. Type R is even better than that, but if you're trying to get the best shifter feel, I think that the SI is still going to be a little bit better. But if you want the better comfort and stuff, I don't think it's that big of a downgrade. I think obviously you do lose out on the auto rev matching and stuff with the Accords. They don't have that, but as long as you're okay doing that yourself, I think the Accord is definitely worth considering. So if they're 30 grand, that's a little less of a value because I think they were like around that price new, even for the 2.0 T manual back in the day, because they were only on the sport trims. You couldn't get it with like a fully loaded Accord or anything. So that seems a little pricey, but I guess considering how rare they are, that probably makes sense. But yeah, that makes a little bit of a trickier proposition. I guess it's just if you want extra comfort, get the Accord. Otherwise, Civic's probably the better buy. If you're going to spend 30 grand on both of them, you're better off getting a brand new car with a better shifter, no rev hang from the factory, and a tiny bit more power if you're comparing 1.5T to 1.5T. So I'd probably say SI, unless you ride in an SI and it's a little stiff, then I would go for the Accord. Thank you so much again, Tom, for the super chat there. Linda says, I'm in the DC area as in Herndon. If you have time, I'll treat you to lunch if you're in Northern Virginia later this summer. I really appreciate that, Linda. Yeah, we'll see. So part of the reason we've gone down there in the past is that my wife has a friend down there as well that lives in DC. So we always hang out and visit her a good bit of the time. But we'll see if I can do something while I'm in DC there. I'll definitely try and see if I can maybe pull together a little meet or something too. That could be fun. We will see. A lot of times, even with these weekend things, it's pretty time crunched where I'm just filming the reviews as fast as I can. And then I get back to trying to still have time, to hang out with the family and stuff and do the touristy things and all that. But we will see, what happens. And I will try and publicize if I am going to DC to try and, put something together there and see if I can film. Because there's a few cars. There's a few cars down there. I could really make a whole week out of the DC thing and just do it as a separate business trip, honestly, because there's so many things down there I need to film. So we'll see how I end up scheduling that whole thing. I may just spend some more time down there, and I might have some time for some lunches or some meetups and things like that. And Raphael, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships as well. I really appreciate that. And I see everyone has their gifting on there, so you guys grabbed them up nice and quick. So thanks for grabbing those, and thank you so much, Raphael, for gifting those. And Jay says last gen Accord never came with the LSD, I believe. Yeah, did not come with the LSD. So if that's important to you, Tom, definitely SI is the way to go for that. And if I also have to say, Tom, though, if you do want the extra comfort, since Jay was mentioning earlier about the FK8s, that's another one. If you want the most comfort, FK8 with the 2021 refresh, now they're going to be more than 30 grand, but with those adaptive dampers, they are so comfortable in comfort mode. I think that actually the comfort probably rivals the Accord with those dampers. So if you want the most comfortable Civic with the best manual out there, and you can stretch up to 38 grand or so, like Jay was mentioning, try and go for a Type R if you can. Because then you might have all the best of all the worlds. You have the fantastic shifter, you have the fantastic comfort. As long as you can live with the styling, the FK8 might be a sweet spot for you as well. If you can afford that. If you can't, again, SI is great too. But I know that's a big jump up to spend another 8 to 10 grand. But if you can, that might be another good one to consider, Tom. And thank you so much for chiming in about that, Jay. Let me see. So Kevin says, I think they'll ever make another Mazda Speed with the 2.5 turbo or inline 6 turbo. I don't think so, unless they have a change of heart at management. It seems like Mazda is trying to just push up market, and they don't want to do the luxury thing anymore, or the performance thing. They're all about the luxury, where the 2.5 turbo only exists so they can compete well with the Audi A3s and anything else in the German vehicles that are turbocharged and more powerful. That's why there's a Mazda 3 turbo. That's why they did the Mazda 6 turbo. That's why you have the higher versions of the CX-5, and that's why they're doing the CX-90. It's all about competing with the Germans and being a premium luxury brand. And they had their chance. The Mazda 3 hatch with that motor, they could have just done a version with a louder exhaust and a sportier suspension tune, but they didn't. It's just their direction and doesn't allow for that. And they've been asked so many times when they're doing a Mazda Speed thing, and everyone at Mazda's been like, no, we're not doing it. Like, leave it alone. Like, Mazda Speed is dead, basically, it seems. So it's sad, but I think that's just not a focus for them. And I think, honestly, in their eyes, Mazda Speed would downgrade the progress that Mazda has made as far as becoming a premium brand. Because now it's like, oh, well, now you have this sporty thing, which the Germans all have their sport divisions as well. But I think Mazda Speed, they just associate with, old Mazda Speed 3s and, just like the tuner crowd, which I think they want to space themselves away from the tuner crowd in a lot of ways, with, going premium and all that. So I think it's just something they don't want to open that box, I guess. I could be wrong. Maybe they've changed, but I think that's, from all the interviews I've read, that's kind of how it's come off to me, from what I've read from them. So we'll have to see, but I wouldn't hold your breath for a new Mazda Speed. Raphael says, everyone can laugh at me. I work in IT. I had to figure out where to gift memberships. Well, yeah, I don't know how to do any of that stuff either. So I'm glad you guys figured it out. Cause I see the little icons here at the bottom of the chat box, but I don't know how half of that works. So you're not the only one, Raphael. So I appreciate you trying to figure it out and being able to do that. I really appreciate it. All right, let me see any other questions that I missed here from non-members. See, most people in here are now members, especially thanks to those gifts. So I really appreciate those gifts. But let me see. I can find any others here. So Adam says, do you think the RDX is going to get a Type S? I don't think so. At least not for this generation. It's too late in the game, I think, for them to come out with it now. So you may see one for the next generation. But I think really ZDX Type S is going to kind of fill that spot. That's the next thing that's coming here. I think next year, I think that will kind of be, an RDX, a next gen RDX Type S in a lot of ways. So maybe they'll do one for the gas one. We'll have to see. I just feel like with Acura, I don't know what their timeline's like as far as electrification goes. I think they've said, but I don't remember how quickly that's going to affect their current, models in the lineup. But I think ZDX Type S is going to be the way they'll do that in a way. And Stratus Edge says, do you think the Genesis brand has now found its place among the other luxury manufacturers? I think they have. I think especially for people who are, former Lincoln buyers that don't have a sedan to buy anymore, they can now go buy, the Genesis models. And at least around here, there are GV70s everywhere and a good amount of GV80s too, but like they are really selling a lot of them around here. So like if that's the same everywhere else in the country, I think the Genesis is really on a roll. And I think that I see more Genesis GV70s now than I see. Honestly, I see more of them than I see even RDXs, and certainly more than I see of any Infinities out there. So I think that Genesis has kind of leapfrogged a lot of those and really is, not maybe as high up as the Germans yet, but I think that they are right there. They're like spot number 4 almost, I think, in my mind, and what I'm perceiving as far as the amount of vehicles I see out on the road. I think that Genesis has really come a long way, and yeah, I think they're doing really well. I still love their stuff. I wish the electric stuff was a little cheaper. Like the electrified GV70 and GV80 are just really expensive, and I feel like that might be a misstep. But as far as other than that, everything else they've been doing is fantastic, in my opinion. And Hugo, thank you so much for another super chat here. He says, I'll take you to some good breweries here in Northern Virginia. I appreciate the offer, Hugo. Yeah, it seems like I got a lot of friends in Northern Virginia here. So we'll maybe try and do something, and maybe I'll stretch it out and do something longer than a weekend or something so I can film everything I need to film and get to hang out and have some good time with some of you guys as well. That'd be awesome. So see if we can do that. Just always comes down to time because I'm just like, I already have car reviews scheduled out till like the end of July almost. And then I already have stuff for August, and it's just like it always like gets away from me. And these years are just flying by. Like I was at Harrison Auto Sales back in January, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do more car reviews at Harrison Auto Sales this year. And I'm like, holy crap, it's June already. I'm halfway through this year, and I didn't go back at all to do any more cars. I've wanted to do more from there, but it's just like I blink and 6 months has passed, and I'm like, man, like where did the time go? And it's just one of those things. I'm so buried in my work, and it's just between all the press vehicles and all the trips and everything else. It's just like there's just no time to do any of these other vehicles, unfortunately. And Joel says, hi, Matt. Have a great day. Can't wait for the new 4Runner. Yeah, I'm excited for the new 4Runner as well. We'll see how fast that comes. I don't know. It's obviously going to probably be based on the new Tacoma, so it could come really soon or it could be a while because, with how well the current 4Runner is selling, I'm sure Toyota's not in any kind of hurry to replace it. So, we'll see. They may wait a few more years for all we know. I don't know what ends up happening with that. But, yeah, we'll see how the rest of the year plays out here and see what happens. Omar says, Matt, can you explain why they made GMC? I always thought it was a luxury brand for Chevy, but then I remembered Cadillac exists. Well, that was, I think, just from the days of, GM having a million brands. If you know your GM history or even just from the past, a couple of decades here, they had Pontiac, they had Oldsmobile, all these little slices of this pie. But whenever you were, again, going back to the days of the big 3 manufacturers, and you were selling 100,000 units of everything, and in some cases, almost 1 million units of some of this stuff, it was a lot easier to split up those pies there. So I think with GMC, it certainly had its place because I don't think they ever wanted to do like Cadillac pickup trucks necessarily, aside from whatever that one was that they did. They did the Escalade ESV, right? Is that what it was called? The truck version of the Avalanche there that Cadillac did. But aside from that, there's just, they never went there with Cadillac. So I think GMC was always the luxury truck brand for them. That's always where it's existed. But, all the other ones like Saturn, Oldsmobile, Pontiac, they went by the wayside because it was like, okay, well, Chevy has performance stuff. So where does Pontiac fit in if Pontiac's a performance brand? And then Oldsmobile used to be performance. Then it turned out to actually be like the old person's car as time went on. but they used to be the cool one. And so it was just kind of this like all these brands trying to fight for survival. And then we have what we have as far as what was left. And Jay says, Matt, have you reviewed the last gen Genesis G70 2.0T with a 6-speed? I have not. They never put a manual into the press fleet, at least in my press fleet. So I never got a crack at one of those. So I have no clue. I've heard the manual isn't the best, but it was like, well, at least it has the manual, so beggars can't be choosers. So I don't think it's the best one out there by any means, but I've heard that 2.0T motor. I mean, it's good in the other stuff I reviewed it in. So I think it's still definitely be a car worth owning if you want a luxury sports sedan with a manual. I think it'd be a cool way to go. And it's something I would certainly be open to as well someday if, I needed something like that. It kind of would be like a spiritual successor to my old Legacy GT Spec B in some ways, because that was a manual. And that was 2.5 and that with a Boxer, Subaru motor. But I feel like the Genesis G70 is kind of calling my name a little bit with that combo with the 6-speed. You can even get them, I believe, with silver with a red interior, like you could have got, like I had on my Spec B back in the day. So, that wouldn't be a bad buy as a used pickup. I think it'd be something cool to get. And if I ever needed something like that, I think that would be something I'd consider too. Truck and Car Guy says, I'm a few hours from Virginia. If you want to do a meetup down this way, good to know. So, all right, we might have a pretty good turnout here if we actually do a meetup. That'd be cool. All right, we'll have to see if I can make something like that happen. And Linda says, I have a neighbor who has some old cars. Maybe I can have him show you some. I'd love to meet Beth and the family also. Yeah, that might be a little more tough to do because, as far as car stuff goes, like I took our daughter to Cars and Coffee here a few weeks ago, and that was okay for, a short while. But it's one of those things, you can't do all day car stuff with a toddler. It's just a lot to ask of them, but it'd be cool to maybe do some kind of little, meetup or something. We'll have to see as far as the family's involvement. If it was a longer trip where I actually had time to like do fan meetups and stuff like that, then that would probably be a solo trip that I would do, but we'll have to see. Yeah. We'll have to see how it plays out. I'd have to fit. There's a lot of like wheels turning in my head now as far as how everything would play out. But I'll try and make something happen. We'll have to see. Hugo says, I think Scion should come back. A good affordable brand. I previously owned a Scion TC. It was awesome. Yeah, and I had a conversation with some journalists, and I think there's one or two Toyota employees that were there too whenever I was in Hawaii about Scion. And someone was mentioning how Scion kind of fulfilled its purpose though, where Scion was obviously is temporary, but it kind of was the gateway brand. I think it kind of turned a lot of people onto Toyota that weren't into them previously. And I think some of these, I can't remember who I was listening to talking about this, but another journalist was saying that like he has friends that like started out with a Scion XB and now they're 4Runner owners or something like that. And people that, kind of were introduced through Scion that are now, diehard Toyota fans. And so in that way, I think Scion was successful in generating a new generation of Toyota buyers and introducing them to the brand and the reliability and all that. And then, once Scion was no more, it was like, yeah, but we also now have all these other products that fit with those people's life. And, they've grown up and now they have kids and they need this and that. And so we offer them a sporty Sienna or we offer them whatever. And I think in that case, Scion was successful. But I agree. It'd be cool to see Scion come back. And speaking of, boxy EVs, I mean, hello, do a new Scion XB that's just a bread van with a skateboard battery pack underneath of it. Again, making it basically a tall Ioniq 5. I think that's all like crazy for Toyota. So we'll have to see. I'd love to see them do something like that. I don't know if they will. I think the coolest thing we may get from them is, there was talks of that new little FJ Cruiser kind of thing coming back, and that could, be electric and could be some type of new like Bronco Sport competitor potentially, something like that. I think might be the most crazy thing we can expect, as far as that kind of stuff goes from Toyota. But we'll have to see. But it'd be great to see Scion come back for sure. And Kevin, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, thanks for joining and for the super chat there, Kevin. And if you have any other questions, okay, I see you did have a question here about any word if Volkswagen will redesign the GTI infotainment system for next year. They are redoing it. I think there's a software update even to do new menus. Maybe it's not a software update, but it's coming because the new stuff like the ID Buzz I just covered on Friday here and the ID7 and stuff is getting a reworked version of the infotainment system. So that can certainly have some improvement there as far as heavier redesigns, like the Buzz has the illuminated slider controls, so they're doing that. They've talked about having more buttons in the future, but we haven't seen that materialize really just yet. So definitely for next year, the best I could say you could expect is probably, new software. The illuminated controls, I think they said those are coming for the refresh of the GTI, which is probably another year or two away. So I don't think for next year there's going to be any big changes aside from software, possibly. So if you're on the fence about a GTI, yeah, I would say it's certainly not the best. But after living with a GTI for a week and living with a Golf R for a week, especially if you use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto a lot, then you don't really use that much of the Volkswagen system anyway. I don't think it's a deal breaker. If you really like the GTI and you use smartphone integration, I think that the infotainment system is going to be fine, and you're not going to really have too many issues with it, hopefully. And the minor things you'll have as far as climate control stuff or things like that, hopefully be minor enough. The rest of the car will be good enough to justify putting up with those minor nuisances. But thank you so much again for the super chat there, Kevin. Let me see. So got some other questions here. So Challenger Chris says he's East Tennessee off of I-81 there. Jay says rural drive sedan with manual are going to be extinct. Yeah, it seems like it's going that way. Cadillac's fighting the good fight with the CT4 and the CT5, but we'll see how much longer those things stick around for him. Rafi says the TC was super cool when it was out. Surprisingly, there's still tons of them on the road. Yeah, because they're super reliable Toyotas. I love the TC. Especially the first generation. I love the first gen TC. And if I needed to buy like a super cheap, solid car, you can get a decent TC for like $5,000 to $8,000. I would totally, like, if I had less than $10,000 to spend, I'd probably either get a TC or I'd get a super old Civic Si. Those would be like my two toss-ups under $10,000. But I love the TC. I think it's a really solid buy even these days. Raphael says, I like the idea of cars and coffee, but it's like bike night. I show up and 20 minutes later, I'm ready to get on the road and enjoy driving. Yeah, that's me too. I mean, I really enjoy talking to people and talking cars. So for me, I can last a little more than 20 minutes, but yeah, a lot of times for me, like, I just want to drive. Like, if I have free time, like standing in a parking lot and talking is cool, and checking out other people's cars is fine. But I mean, I love the social aspect, but a lot of times I just want to be driving. Like, I just want to drive. That is, like, bottom line, like, that's always been the one thing that I've loved more than anything else, is like just the act of driving. I don't know why, but like, I love it. I love road trips. I just everything about driving, just to me, just still is one of my favorite things to do. And Dragon, thank you so much for another super chat. He says you also have friends in the land of Maple Land, especially Ontario. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much again for the super chat. I'd love to do a Canadian trip as well. I'd love to go up, because honestly, Toronto is like 5 hours from Pittsburgh. It's really close. So I could like get to Toronto about as fast as I can get to Virginia Tech, where I went to college. It's like kind of funny. So yeah, I definitely want to do a Canada trip at some point here in the future as well. And I do have some sweet cars. There's like, someone offered me a Lexus LFA up in Quebec, and I just have never been able to drive up there to do it. But it's like, I have all these sweet cars waiting for me all over the world. And it's just like, having the time to go and drive them is the tricky part. But there's also a guy in Toronto that's offered me a Porsche 911 GT3 Touring. And I never got around to doing that either, because I'm just, again, it's just I gotta find the time. Just time is just always the thing that screws me. And speaking of time, we got 3 minutes left here, and then we'll have to end the live stream here. But Goth Rocker says, I'm not a cars and coffee person at all. Too many idiots. Everyone thinking their car is the greatest. Always arguments, jealousy. Just shows how awful humans are. Lots of low comments. That sucks that your cars and coffees are so crappy. I mean, I think it definitely depends on the group and the area, I guess, that you're in. Thankfully, the ones here in Pittsburgh have always been pretty respectful. Everyone's been pretty cool. They also are really strictly moderated, where like they have signs up there like, no one's allowed to gather to film the cars as they're leaving. No one's allowed to rev. No one's allowed to like, peel out or accelerate. Like, you have to drive slow leaving. No one's allowed to film you leaving, at least at the exit there, so that no one's tempted to do these takeoffs and stuff. So I think that kind of stuff kind of helps curb some of that behavior, because they will like tell people like, don't come back if they're acting like idiots. So I think that, it really comes down to how the events are managed as well, but they can really get out of hand for sure. And it's unfortunate that you haven't had a great experience at them. And I have seen, again, I don't know how accurate social media is sometimes with this stuff, but I have seen that there's been some I guess some of these car community events that are starting to go downhill in some ways. And so, I hope that, the car community stays, cool, because at the end of the day, we all, if as long as you can put your ego aside, we all have the same thing in common. We all like going fast, or we all like having, cool things with four wheels, whether you like the stance thing or you like low riders or you like lifted stuff or whatever the case is. You all like driving and you like having cool things with four wheels. Like, it used to be that was enough to bond people, and I know these days there's a lot of other divisive things that are causing rifts, but I just hope that the car community can remember the things that bring us together and focus on those things. You don't have to worry about everyone else's views on everything else, and just focus on that one thing, and let that bond you, and hope that you can put the rest aside. But I know that's getting harder and harder to do as everyone continues to get more and more polarized in opposite directions and all that. It's just unfortunate how social media has really amped up a lot of people's opinions and people's just ability to bite their tongue and be respectful and stuff. It's just unfortunate. So, all right, a couple other little questions here. Jay says you definitely need to find the time for those cars. Yeah, I mean, and the thing though with like the LFA and the GT3s and stuff like that, though, those cars wouldn't get any views. I mean, like we all were talking here today how we love the RS6 Avant. That's got 7,000 views. Guess what has 4 times as many views that was posted even more recently? My Corolla Cross Week video. That one's got like 21,000 views. So it's like, the stuff that I want to do is the LFAs and the GT3s, but they'll get 500 views. And then, I do some normal mainstream thing and that's going to get way more views. So it's just, that also makes it tough to justify from a time standpoint. If I'm getting paid essentially minimum wage to do this video and then, it just doesn't get any views, then it's like, it's one of those things. I love to do it, but I'm also trying to do this as a business and not just, for the fun of it. So it's the pressures of being YouTube, as the Trucking Car Guy says very eloquently. That's what it is. And so Hugo says, awesome feed, man. Catch up with you next week. Have a great Sunday. You as well. And yeah, we have at the 2-hour mark here. So thank you all so much for joining in here. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Sunday and a great week here coming up. Thank you all once again for joining. It's always so much fun doing these live streams here. And it's a blast hanging out with you guys every week. Thanks for taking the time and spending the time here to chat every week. I really appreciate it, even though I know it's nice outside and everyone, has other things to do. So I really appreciate those of you who decide to take time out of your Sunday. It really means a lot to me. And thank you all very much for watching. Stay tuned for lots more exciting videos here coming this week. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.